Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash became a gym leader and got a harem of all-female gym leaders. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Earth Badge's weight. The dust in Viridian City tasted different than the dust in Pallet Town. Pallet dust was soft, smelling of turned earth and sea salt. Viridian dust was industrial, gritty, tasting of old concrete, exhaust fumes, and the lingering, metallic tang of failure. Ash Ketchum wiped a streak of grime from his forehead with the back of a glove, his breath venting in a visible cloud against the crisp morning air. He stood in the center of what used to be the main arena of the Viridian City Gym. "Careful with that beam," he called out, his voice carrying easily over the roar of machinery. "Charizard, ease it down, left side, gently." Above him, the massive flame-tailed lizard hovered, muscles bunching beneath orange scales as he lowered a 2-ton steel I-beam into place. Charizard didn't roar. He simply exhaled a stream of smoke, his eyes locked on Ash's hand signals. With a metallic clang that vibrated through the soles of Ash's boots, the beam settled onto the new support pylons. "Perfect," Ash murmured. He looked at the Machamp belonging to the construction foreman, which was struggling to lift a pallet of cement bags. Ash walked over, stepping seamlessly into the creature's rhythm. "Need a hand?" The Machamp grunted, surprised, as the human grabbed the corner of the pallet. Ash didn't use a Pokemon move. He didn't glow with aura. He simply braced his legs, engaged his core, and lifted. For a second, the sheer physical density of the man surprised the fighting type. Ash Ketchum was no longer the scrawny boy who had left Kanto years ago. He was 24, built like a middleweight boxer, his body hardened by years of climbing mountains, sleeping in forests, and training alongside monsters. They moved the pallet together. The foreman, a burly man named Garrus, stared with a clipboard hanging loosely from his hand. "You know, usually the gym leaders just sign the checks," Garrus said, chewing on a toothpick. "They don't haul cement, Mr. Ketchum." "Just Ash," he corrected, dusting off his hands, "and I'm not the gym leader yet, not officially." "Right. The paperwork." Garrus looked around the cavernous space. The Viridian Gym had been abandoned for years. After Giovanni, after the interim leaders, it had fallen into disrepair. Squatters had stripped the copper wiring. Wild Rattata had nested in the spectator stands. "You sure you want this place, Ash? You're the monarch. You could have the penthouse suite at the Winden Stadium. You could buy the Sylph Company building if you wanted to." Ash adjusted his hat, not the red and white cap of his youth, but a simpler, black tactical cap given to him by the Alalon police force. He looked up at the shattered skylight, where the morning sun was trying to pierce the gloom. "I don't need a penthouse," Ash said quietly. "I need a wall." "A wall?" Ash didn't explain. He couldn't tell Garrus that the energy readings in the Kanto region were shifting. He couldn't explain that the wild Pokemon in Route 1 were getting more aggressive, or that he woke up 3 nights a week with a migraine that felt like a psychic-type attack drilling into his frontal lobe. He felt a storm coming, something older and heavier than Team Rocket, and Viridian City was the gate to Kanto. If the storm broke, it would break here first. Just a figure of speech, Ash lied smoothly. "How long until the electrical grid is?" A screech of tires outside cut him off. Ash sighed. The sound was aggressive, expensive, and out of place. He signaled Charizard to land. The dragon dropped down, the impact shaking the dust off the bleachers, and folded his wings, creating a wall of heat behind his trainer. "Sounds like the suits are here," Ash muttered. The double doors of the gym were pushed open. The sunlight flooded in, silhouetting 3 figures. The one in the lead walked with the click-clack cadence of expensive loafers on concrete. "Cease operations immediately." The voice was nasally, projected with the confidence of someone who had never been punched in the face. Ash didn't turn immediately. He picked up a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, and took a long drink. Only then did he pivot. The man approaching was dressed in the pristine navy blue of the Pokemon League Association, the PLA. He held a tablet like a weapon. Flanking him were 2 bodyguards, both releasing Pokemon from luxury balls. A Rhyperior and a Magnezone. "I am Inspector Vane, PLA Compliance Division," the man announced, stopping 10 yards away. He wrinkled his nose at the dust. You are in violation of Zoning Ordinance 4 Alpha. This structure is condemned property of the League. All renovation is to halt. Ash looked at the Rhyperior. It was high level, probably mid-50s, but its stance was sloppy. It relied on its armor too much. I bought the deed 3 weeks ago, Ash said, his voice level. Paid in full. Transfer authorized by Champion Lance. Champion Lance does not oversee municipal zoning, Vane scoffed, tapping his tablet. Furthermore, your application to reinstate the Viridian Gym is denied. The League has determined that your presence here is a destabilizing factor. We cannot have the World Monarch playing house in a Tier 3 city. It upsets the sponsorship algorithms. Ash's eyes narrowed. Sponsorship algorithms. You are a global asset, Mr. Ketchum. You belong in Galar, or perhaps running the battle frontier. You do not belong in this. Vane gestured vaguely at the rubble. Dump. I am here to serve you an eviction notice. Vacate the premises, or we will be forced to remove you. Behind Ash, Charizard growled. The sound was low, like a tectonic plate shifting. The temperature in the room spiked 10 degrees instantly. Vane's bodyguards flinched, their hands going to their belts. Easy, Charizard, Ash said softly. He stepped forward, the heavy boots crunching on the debris. You want to remove me? I have the authority to authorize force against squatters, Vane said, his voice wavering slightly before he regained his composure. My escorts are elite-class trainers. Ash looked at the bodyguards. They were seasoned, sure. Mercenaries, likely. They looked at Ash with a mix of recognition and fear, but the paycheck was evidently enough to keep them standing. I see, Ash said. He unclipped a single Pokeball from his belt. It wasn't one of the flashy Cherish Balls or Ultra Balls. It was a standard, scratched, red and white Pokeball that looked like it had been through a war, because it had. Pikachu, Ash said. The yellow mouse hopped down from Ash's shoulder. Pikachu didn't spark. He didn't say his name. He just landed on all fours, his tail twitching once. His eyes were dark, focused beads. 3 against 1, Ash proposed. If you win, I walk away. I leave the deed, the money, everything. Vane blinked. A greedy light flickered in his eyes. To be the man who defeated the World Monarch. It would make his career, and if you win? You sign the zoning permits, right now, and you leave my city. Accepted, Vane snapped. He threw his own Pokeball. Arcanine, take the field. A massive canine materialized, roaring, fire dripping from its maw. The Rhyperior stomped the ground, cracking the cement. The Magnezone hovered, electricity crackling between its magnets. 3 heavyweights. All fully evolved. Ash stood with his hands in his pockets. Whenever you're ready. Arcanine, Extreme Speed, Magnezone, Flash Cannon, Rhyperior, Rock Wrecker. Vane screamed, going for the kill immediately. The air exploded. Arcanine blurred, becoming a streak of orange kinetic energy. The Magnezone charged a beam of blinding steel light. Rhyperior ripped a boulder from the earth and hurled it. It was a wall of death. Pikachu, Ash said. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his voice above a conversational volume. Quick attack. The pattern is Delta. Crack. It wasn't the sound of thunder. It was the sound of the sound barrier breaking. Pikachu didn't run. He vanished. The Arcanine, mid-sprint, suddenly jerked violently to the left as something slammed into its ribcage with the force of a wrecking ball. Pikachu had moved under the extreme speed, using his small size as a fulcrum, and slammed his iron-hard tail into the soft tissue behind the foreleg. Arcanine tumbled, crashing into the Rhyperior's legs. The Rhyperior stumbled, the Rock Wrecker shot going wide and smashing into the far wall. Magnezone, lock on, Vane shrieked. Iron Tail, throat, Ash commanded. Pikachu, still midair from the impact with Arcanine, twisted his body. He kicked off the stumbling Rhyperior's face, using the rock hide as a launchpad, and shot straight up toward the hovering steel magnet. His tail glowed white, not yellow, no electricity, just pure, hardened steel energy. He spun like a buzzsaw. The impact against the Magnezone was deafening. Metal shrieked against metal. Pikachu drove the tail directly into the central eye unit's housing, not piercing it, but delivering a concussive shock so severe the magnet's levitation disrupted. The Magnezone dropped like a stone. Pikachu landed softly on the ground. The Arcanine was wheezing, ribs cracked. The Rhyperior was confused, trying to find the target. The Magnezone was rebooting on the floor. I didn't see. Vayne stammered. Use Thunderbolt. Why didn't he use Thunderbolt? Because I didn't tell him to, Ash said coldly. Rhyperior has Lightning Rod ability. Electric moves would just boost its special attack. Magnezone resists it. You built a team specifically to counter a Pikachu. Ash took a step forward. The pressure radiating off him wasn't magical. It was the sheer weight of experience. It was the presence of a man who had stared down Eternatus. But you forgot something, Inspector. Pikachu isn't just an electric type, he's my partner. Ash raised a finger. Finish it. Web pattern. Pikachu blurred again. He bounced off the walls, a zigzagging missile of white light. He hit the Arcanine, out cold. Ricocheted to the Magnezone, sparks flying, offline, and ended by dropping from the ceiling directly onto the Rhyperior's head with a heel drop that cracked the floor beneath the heavyweight's feet. Silence. 10 seconds had passed since the start of the battle. 3 elite-tier Pokémon lay unconscious. Pikachu stood in the center of the carnage, dusting his paws. He looked bored. Ash walked over to Vayne. The inspector was trembling, the tablet slipping from his sweaty fingers. The permit, Ash said, holding out his hand. Vayne scrambled to unlock the device, his fingers fumbling. Why yes. Yes, Mr. Ketchum. Immediately. Zoning approved. Historical site designation. Tax-exempt status. Just, please. Ash took the tablet, checked the digital signature, and handed it back. Get your Pokémon to a center. The Arcanine has a hairline fracture on the third rib. Rhyperior has a mild concussion. Vayne recalled his fallen team with shaking hands and fled, his bodyguards scrambling after him. Ash watched them go. The adrenaline faded, replaced instantly by the dull ache of fatigue. He sat down on a pile of unbroken cinder blocks and exhaled a long breath. Show off, a voice echoed from the entrance. Ash smiled. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The scent of rain and water lilies drifted through the dust. I had to establish boundaries, Ash said. You broke the floor, Ash. We just poured that concrete yesterday. Misty walked into the light. She had change. The side ponytail was gone, replaced by a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her face. She wore a high-collared cerulean trench coat over a fitted white bodysuit, practical but undeniably stylish. She walked with the grace of a devastating tide, fluid but heavy. She stopped in front of him, hands on her hips. Her eyes, the color of a deep ocean, scanned him for injuries. You look like hell, she stated. Good to see you too, Mist, Ash replied. Ghosting the world for 6 months? Ignoring calls from the chaotic mess that is the Indigo Plateau? I had to threaten to drown the PLA chairman just to find out where you were. I was busy. Busy doing what? Playing construction worker. She gestured to the gym. Ash, you're the monarch. You shouldn't be here fighting bureaucrats. You should be. She trailed off, her frustration losing steam as she looked at his eyes. She saw the bags under them. The tension in his jaw. The way his hand rested near his belt, even now. She sighed, sitting down next to him on the cinder blocks. She didn't care about the dust on her coat. It's bad, isn't it? She asked softly. Ash leaned back, resting his elbows on his knees. Yeah. Something's wrong, Misty. The energy. It's screaming. I can hear it. It's like a high-pitched whine that never stops. Is that why you came back to Viridian? This is the source. Or close to it. The ley lines converge here. If I'm going to stop whatever is coming, I need a fortress. Not a stadium. Misty reached into her bag and pulled out 2 cans of lukewarm coffee. She popped the tab on one and handed it to him. So, the harem of gym leaders rumor the tabloids are spreading. Is that part of the fortress strategy? Ash choked on his coffee. The what? Misty smirked, a flash of the old, fiery girl breaking through the elegant woman. Oh, you haven't seen the net? Monarch Ash Ketchum returns, seeks to unite female leaders for mysterious project. It's trending. Sabrina apparently threatened to turn a reporter into a doll when asked about it. I just asked for help, Ash groaned, rubbing his temples. I need people I trust. People who can fight without me holding their hand. And you trust me? Ash turned to look at her. The setting sun was casting long shadows through the broken skylight, bathing them in amber. "I trust you more than anyone," he said. It wasn't a line. It was a fact, delivered with the same certainty as a command in battle. Misty's breath hitched slightly. She looked away, taking a sip of her coffee to hide the flush rising on her neck. "Well. Good. Because you're going to need me. This place is a disaster. Your financial records are a joke, and your contractors are eating you alive on material costs." "I'm good at battling," Ash admitted, "not accounting." "Exactly. Which is why I'm staying." Ash looked at her, surprised. "What about Cerulean?" "My sisters can handle the badge handouts for a few weeks. They've actually gotten decent at battling since. Well, since the war." She stood up, brushing off her coat. "I'm not leaving you alone to fight invisible monsters, Ash. Not this time." She held out a hand. Ash looked at it. He felt the weight of the Earth badge he had never truly earned back in the day. He felt the years of travel, the goodbyes, the solitude of the champion's throne. He took her hand. Her grip was strong, callus against callus. "Welcome to the team, Misty. Location: undisclosed location, 30,000 feet above sea level." The drone feed cut to static as the drone was recalled. Lord Kalen sat in a chair made of suspended anti-gravity weave. The room was dark, lit only by the holographic screens surrounding him. He was a man of sharp angles. Silver hair cut perfectly straight, a suit that looked more like armor, and eyes that were a pale, unnerving violet. "Analysis?" he asked. The AI voice was genderless. "Subject: Ash Ketchum. Threat level: Omega. Combat efficiency has increased by 400% since the World Coronation series. He neutralized the PL series droids, Magnezone unit, in 0.4 seconds. Kalen tapped a finger against the armrest. He didn't use electricity. He's suppressing his signature. He knows we're watching the energy spikes. "Shall we deploy the dampeners?" "No," Kalen mused. "Not yet. He is gathering allies. The water leader, Misty, has joined him. The psychic, Sabrina, has been tracking our movement vectors." He stood up and walked to the massive window. Below him, the clouds churned. "He thinks he is building a fortress," Kalen whispered. "He thinks he can punch his way out of the entropy that is coming." Kalen raised his hand. On his palm, a small, black geometric shape rotated, a shard of pure, condensed darkness. It pulsed like a dying heart. "Let him build his walls. It will just make it sweeter when we tear them down. Initiate Phase 1. The silence. Target the psychic frequencies first. If he wants to rely on his instincts, let's see how he fights when he's blind." He crushed the hologram of Viridian City in his fist. "Welcome home, Monarch." Later that night, the gym was silent. Ash had set up a cot in the manager's office, a small room off the main arena. Pikachu was curled up on the pillow, fast asleep. Ash couldn't sleep. He sat at the desk, staring at a map of Kanto. He had marked 3 locations with red ink: Viridian, Saffron, and Pewter. The triad, he thought. Rock, psychic, ground. The physical defense of the region. His poke-ear buzzed. Caller. Sabrina. Ash stared at the screen. He hadn't given Sabrina his number. He picked up. "Sabrina? They're coming, Ash." Her voice wasn't coming through the speaker. It was resonating directly inside his auditory nerve. It sounded strained, terrified. The silence. It's eating the noise. I can't hear my Alakazam." Ash stood up, knocking the chair over. "Sabrina, where are you?" "I don't know. It's dark. Ash, the bond. They're cutting the bonds." Static screamed in his mind, a psychic backlash so severe his nose started bleeding. "Sabrina." The line went dead. Ash looked at Pikachu. The mouse was awake, ears flat against his head, growling at the shadows in the corner of the room. The shadows were moving. Ash grabbed his belt. "Wake up, buddy. Break time's over." The construction of the fortress was over. The war had just begun. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The psychic siege. The shadows in the corner of the office didn't behave like shadows. They didn't stretch or fade with the light, they coiled. "Pikachu, Iron Tail. Sweep the perimeter," Ash commanded, his voice low and tight. Pikachu launched from the cot, his tail glowing with the metallic sheen of hardened energy. He slashed through the darkness, but there was no impact. The shadows dispersed like smoke, reforming instantly closer to the desk. Not a ghost type, Ash realized. His aura flared, a dull, throbbing headache behind his eyes. Technology. Cloaking fields. The air in the room suddenly screamed. It wasn't a sound, it was a tear in the fabric of space. A violet singularity ripped open 3 feet above the floor, distorting the light, sucking the papers off the desk into a swirling vortex. Ash. The voice was ragged. A body fell from the rift, crashing hard onto the unfinished concrete floor. The portal snapped shut with a sound like a thunderclap, leaving the smell of ozone and burnt hair in the air. Ash was moving before the figure stopped rolling. He slid onto his knees, his hands hovering over the intruder. It was Sabrina. The Saffron City gym leader, usually composed of ice and silk, looked like she had been through a war zone. Her trademark long hair was matted with sweat and dust. Her clothes, a dark tactical variant of her usual dress, were torn at the shoulder. But it was her eyes that terrified Ash. They were wide, dilated, and frantically darting around the room, seeing things that weren't there. "Get them out!" she screamed, clawing at her own temples. "Get them out of my head, it's too quiet." "Sabrina, look at me," Ash said, grabbing her wrists to stop her from hurting herself. Her skin was freezing. "You're in Viridian. You're safe." "No safety," she gasped, her eyes trying to focus on him but failing. The silence. It ate the Alakazam. It just turned him off, like a machine. The shadows in the corner lunged. Ash didn't look up. He didn't need to. He felt the displacement of air. Lucario. The Pokeball on his belt burst open without him touching it, a reaction to his spike in adrenaline. The Jackal Pokemon materialized in a blur of blue and black fur. He didn't use a move. He simply intercepted the lunging shadow, catching a cloaked wrist in one paw. Crunch. A mercenary, clad in a sleek, light-bending suit, materialized as his stealth drive failed under the impact. He cried out, dropping a jagged, vibrating knife. Lucario spun, throwing the man into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. "Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Full spread. Fried circuits," Ash ordered. Pikachu unleashed a chaotic sphere of electricity. It didn't target a single enemy. It saturated the room. 2 more cloaked figures short-circuited in the corners, their suits sparking and failing as they collapsed, twitching. Ash gathered Sabrina in his arms. She was light, dangerously so. "Lucario, guard the door. Pikachu, you're on point. We're moving to the medical bay." "Ash," Sabrina whispered, her head lolling against his chest. "Your mind. It's so loud." "Just focus on the noise, Sabrina," he murmured, kicking the door open. "Focus on me." The medical bay was one of the few finished rooms in the Viridian gym, stocked with high-grade potions and trauma kits left over from Ash's travels. He set Sabrina down on the sterile table. Misty burst in seconds later, her Gyarados' Pokeball already in hand. She took one look at the unconscious mercenaries Lucario was dragging down the hall, then at Sabrina. "Status?" Misty asked, her voice snapping into crisis mode. "Saffron is compromised," Ash said, ripping open a package of gauze. He cleaned a cut on Sabrina's forehead. She said something about the silence. It neutralized her team. Misty moved to the monitors, pulling up the regional news feed. "Network is down in Saffron City. Complete blackout. No calls, no internet. The trains have stopped." She looked back at Ash, her face pale. "Ash, Saffron is the telecommunications hub for the entire region. If it goes dark, then Kanto is blind," Ash finished. Sabrina gasped, arching her back off the table. Her eyes snapped open, glowing with a faint, fractured violet light. "They're here," she hissed. "Who?" "The dampeners," she choked out. "They don't fight, they suppress." A low, mechanical hum began to vibrate through the floor. It wasn't a sound you heard with your ears. It was a frequency that rattled the teeth. The lights in the medical bay flickered. Ash felt it instantly. His connection to Lucario, usually a thick, steel cable of emotion, suddenly frayed. It became thin, static-filled. "My aura," Ash said, gripping the edge of the table. "Something is jamming the frequency." Misty grabbed a Pokeball. "Starmie, come out." The star-shaped Pokemon appeared, but its core gem was dull. It spun sluggishly, confused. It's an anti-bond field, Sabrina whispered, tears leaking from her eyes. It severs the connection between trainer and Pokémon. It reduces them to wild beasts. Without commands. Without the bond, they panic. Outside, a boom shook the building. Ash walked to the window. The courtyard of the gym was filling with smoke. Through the haze, he saw a squad of 12 soldiers. They wore matte black armor with no insignias. In the center of their formation was a floating device, a black octahedron pulsing with the same rhythm as the hum. They want to take us alive, Ash noted, his voice devoid of fear. If they wanted us dead, they would have bombed the building. He turned back to the women. Misty, keep Starmie close. Use verbal commands only. Loud and clear. The telepathic link is gone. And you? Misty asked. Ash adjusted his gloves. He looked at Lucario. The jackal was snarling, clutching his head, confused by the sudden silence in his mind. Ash walked over and placed his forehead against Lucario's snout. He didn't try to use aura. He just used touch, skin on fur. I'm right here, Ash said firmly. I'm not in your head. I'm right here. Trust your eyes. Trust my voice. Lucario's breathing slowed. He opened his eyes, the red irises focusing on Ash. He nodded once. Sabrina, Ash said, turning to the psychic. She was sitting up, trembling. Can you fight? I can't focus, she stammered. The field. It's like trying to think through mud. I can't lock onto them. Ash walked over to her. He took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You don't need to lock onto them, he said intensely. Lock onto me. What? My mind, Ash said. You said it was loud. Use it. Anchor yourself to me. I'll be your targeting system. Sabrina stared at him. To a psychic, entering another person's mind was an intimate act, more intimate than touch. It meant seeing their fears, their memories, their raw self. Do it, Ash commanded. Sabrina closed her eyes. She reached out with her mind, pushing past the static of the dampener field, searching for the blazing fire that was Ash Ketchum. She found it. It wasn't complex or guarded. It was a roaring furnace of determination. There was no deception, no hesitation. It was a singular will. Protect. She gasped as the connection snapped into place. She wasn't just seeing him, she was him. She felt the callus on his palm, the ache in his shoulder, the adrenaline pumping through his veins. I have you, she whispered. Her eyes opened, and the violet glow returned, sharper this time. Dangerous. Let's go say hello, Ash said. The double doors of the gym blew outward, not from an explosion, but from a concentrated blast of telekinetic force. Ash walked out into the courtyard, flanked by Lucario and Pikachu. Misty took the high ground on the roof, her Gyarados coiling around the chimney. Sabrina floated a few inches off the ground behind Ash, her hands glowing. The 12 soldiers raised their weapons, energy rifles powered by the same dark tech. Surrender, Monarch. The leader shouted, his voice amplified. The field is at 80% capacity. Your beasts cannot coordinate. They aren't beasts, Ash said, continuing to walk forward. The soldiers opened fire. Bolts of red plasma streaked toward them. Right, 45 degrees. Ash shouted. He didn't need to say who. In his mind, he projected the image of the deflection. Sabrina, piggybacking on his neural pathways, saw the trajectory instantly. A barrier of psychic glass materialized in the air, angled perfectly. The plasma bolts hit the barrier and ricocheted into the ground, exploding in harmless showers of dirt. Lucario. Bone rush. 10 o'clock. Lucario didn't wait for the aura command. He trusted the voice. He materialized a staff of blue energy, flickering, unstable, but solid enough, and lunged. He swept the legs of the nearest 3 soldiers. Pikachu, Irontail, the floater. Ash pointed at the hovering black octahedron. The soldiers moved to intercept Pikachu, forming a shield wall. Misty, now, Ash yelled. From the roof, a hydro pump crashed down like the hammer of God. It didn't hit the soldiers directly. It hit the ground in front of them, creating a massive mudslide that broke their formation. Sabrina, grab him. Ash thought the command as he shouted it. Sabrina felt Ash's intent. She extended her hand. A soldier aiming a sniper rifle at Ash was suddenly yanked into the air, enveloped in a blue glow. and tossed casually into a pile of crates. But the dampener field was getting stronger. Ash felt the pressure increasing. His knees buckled slightly. The noise in his head was becoming deafening. Ash, Sabrina's voice echoed in his skull, panicked. I can't hold it. The static. It's burning. The leader of the squad stepped forward. He tapped a command on his wrist. The octahedron pulsed violet. Suddenly, Pikachu collapsed mid-run, seizing. Lucario dropped to one knee, clutching his chest. The resonance is set to match their biological frequency, the leader gloated. Surrender, catch 'em. Or we scramble their brains permanently. Ash stopped. He looked at Pikachu, who was whimpering in pain. He looked at Lucario. He looked at the leader. You're hurting them, Ash said. His voice was very quiet. That is the point. Ash closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Sabrina, he thought. Can you hear me? Barely, she replied, her mental voice faint. Drop the barriers. All of them. You'll get shot. Drop them. The psychic shield in front of Ash vanished. The leader sneered. Fire. 3 soldiers pulled their triggers. Ash moved. He didn't move like a trainer. He moved like a Greninja. He dropped his center of gravity, twisting his torso so the first bolt burned a hole through his jacket, missing his ribs by an inch. He pivoted on his heel, lunging forward. The distance was 10 meters. Ash closed it in 2 seconds. The soldiers were trained to fight Pokémon. They were trained to track fireballs and lightning. They were not trained to track a human male sprinting at full speed with murderous intent. Ash slammed into the leader. He didn't punch. He drove his shoulder into the man's solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him. As the man folded, Ash grabbed the wrist control unit. Get off him, a soldier screamed, swinging a rifle butt. Ash ducked, grabbed the rifle barrel, and yanked. The soldier stumbled forward. Ash swept his legs, sending him crashing into the leader. Ash ripped the control unit from the leader's wrist. He looked at the octahedron. Lucario. Ash roared. Catch! He threw the device into the air, towards the hovering machine. Lucario, fighting through the pain, saw the arc. He forced his body to move. He leapt, spinning in the air. Force palm. Lucario didn't hit the enemy. He hit the wrist controller Ash had thrown, slamming it directly into the octahedron. The collision of the 2 active tech pieces caused a feedback loop. The octahedron shrieked, cracked, and then imploded. The hum vanished. The silence broke. Pikachu gasped, the light returning to his eyes. Lucario landed, breathing hard but standing tall. Now, Ash said, turning to the remaining soldiers. The soldiers looked at the monarch. They looked at the angry Pikachu. They looked at the psychic hovering with renewed, terrifying power. Psybeam, Sabrina whispered. Thunderbolt, Ash added. Hydro pump, Misty called from the roof. The courtyard was engulfed in light. 1 hour later. The soldiers were zip-tied and unconscious, stacked neatly by the gym entrance. Police sirens were wailing in the distance, finally breaking through the blockade. In the gym's kitchen, the mood was somber. Sabrina sat at the small table, holding a mug of tea with both hands. She was still shaking. Ash was leaning against the counter, letting Misty bandage the burn on his side. He didn't wince. That was intimate, Sabrina said softly, not looking up. Ash looked at her. I'm sorry. I had to pull you in deep to bypass the jamming. I saw everything, Sabrina murmured. She looked up, her eyes piercing him. You don't fight for glory. You don't even fight for victory. You fight because you're terrified of losing anyone else. Ash flinched, more from the words than the alcohol Misty was dabbing on his wound. Sabrina. It's okay, she interrupted. She stood up and walked over to him. Misty stepped back, sensing the shift in the air. Sabrina reached out and touched Ash's chest, right over his heart. Your mind is a fortress, Ash. But it's lonely. You were carrying all of us during that fight. You took the pain so we wouldn't have to. That's the job, Ash said gruffly. No, Sabrina said. That's a martyr. We don't need a martyr. We need a king. She leaned in. It wasn't a kiss, but it was close. She pressed her forehead against his. The psychic link flared again, but this time it was gentle. It was a promise. I am staying, Sabrina declared. Saffron can burn for all I care. My place is here. I will be your eyes. No one will ever sneak up on you again. Ash felt the weight of her pledge. It was heavy, like the Earth badge, but it was warm. Okay, he said. Misty cleared her throat, crossing her arms. Touching moment. Really, but we have a problem. She tossed a tablet onto the table. While you two were mind-melding, I hacked the leader's comms, Misty said grimly. That squad wasn't the invasion force. They were the distraction. Distraction for what? Ash asked. Bee and Karina, Misty said. They were en route to Viridian to challenge you. Their flight just disappeared from the radar over Mount Moon. Ash's eyes went cold. The domestic warmth vanished, replaced by the steel of the monarch. Mount Moon, Ash repeated. Kalen, he grabbed his hat. Suit up, Ash commanded. We're going hunting. Sabrina smiled, a small, dangerous curve of her lips. I'll teleport us. I know their energy signatures. Good. Ash looked at the window, toward the dark peaks of the mountains in the north. They made a mistake, Ash whispered. They touched my friends. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Iron and bone. The air atop Mount Moon was thin, biting, and unnaturally still. Space twisted, folding in on itself with a sickening lurch as Sabrina materialized them onto a jagged ridge. Ash hit the ground in a crouch, boots finding purchase on the frozen shale. Beside him, Misty stumbled, nauseous from the long-distance jump, while Sabrina remained floating, her face pale. The psychic exertion of transporting 3 humans across the region instantly was taking its toll. Status? Ash whispered, scanning the dark crater below. I can sense them, Sabrina murmured, her eyes closed, pressing fingers to her temple. 2 distinct life signatures. Turbulent. Angry, but flickering. The dampener field. Yes. It's weaker here than at the gym, but it's interfering with their synchronization. They're fighting blind. Ash looked down into the crater. Smoke was rising from a crumpled heap of metal, the wreckage of a private jet, but the threat wasn't the crash. Shadows were moving in the moonlight, massive, hulking shapes. Stay here, Ash commanded. Sabrina, keep a telekinetic net up for projectiles. Misty, watch our 6. If those Clefairy populations have turned feral, we'll be swarmed. Ash, you can't go down there alone, Misty hissed, grabbing his arm. That's a nesting ground. Ash looked at her, his eyes reflecting the cold starlight. I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to get our friends. He didn't wait for an argument. He vaulted over the ridge, sliding down the scree slope. As he descended, the sounds of battle drifted up. It wasn't the flashy, elemental roar of Pokemon attacks. It was the wet thud of fist against meat, the grunt of exertion, the crack of bone. Ash reached the crash site and slid behind a boulder. In the center of a clearing, back to back, stood 2 women. Bee, the Galar karate prodigy, looked exhausted. Her traditional dojo uniform was torn, revealing bruised skin. Her breathing was ragged, but her stance was perfect, low, grounded, efficient. Karina, the successor of Mega Evolution, was in worse shape. She was favoring her left leg, her roller skates discarded in the snow. Her Lucario and Bee's Machamp were slumped near the wreckage, conscious but lethargic, their eyes glazed over, unable to summon the energy to fight. Surrounding them were 6 Graveler and a massive Golem, but these weren't normal wild Pokemon. Their eyes glowed with a dull, red hostility. They didn't growl. They just advanced with a zombie-like single-mindedness. Keep your guard up, Bee gasped, wiping blood from her lip. The big one is winding up. I know, Karina snapped, though her voice was shaky. My hits aren't connecting right. It's like punching a wall. The golem roared, a distorted, mechanical sound, and curled into a ball. It launched itself, a 2-ton boulder of destruction rolling at highway speeds directly toward the injured Karina. Karina braced herself, knowing she couldn't dodge on her bad leg. She crossed her arms, preparing to be crushed. She squeezed her eyes shut. Crack. The impact never came. Karina opened her eyes. Ash Ketchum stood in front of her. He hadn't stopped the golem. That would be physics-defying suicide. Instead, he had stepped into the roll's path at the last second, grabbed the golem's uneven rocky surface with gloved hands, and used the creature's own momentum to perform a judo throw. He pivoted his hips, turning the deadly roll into a centrifugal spin, and hurled the massive rock Pokemon sideways. The golem smashed into the cliff face, embedding itself in the stone, stunned. Ash exhaled, steam rising from his shoulders. He didn't look back. Pikachu, Iron Tail the ground, create a trench. Pikachu leapt from Ash's shoulder, slamming his tail into the frozen earth. The ground shattered, creating a fissure that separated the remaining Graveler from the humans. Ash turned to the women. Can you walk? Bee stared at him. She had seen champions battle. She had seen Leon command Charizard. She had never seen a human man manually redirect a rolling golem. Ash? Karina blinked, stunned. You threw a rock. It's all about leverage, Ash said briefly. He offered a hand to Karina. Come on, we're leaving. Watch out! Bee screamed. A Graveler had bypassed the trench, leaping through the air with a rock smash ready. It was aiming for Ash's exposed back. Ash didn't turn. He sensed the displacement of air, the aura warning. But before he could move, a blue blur intercepted the rock. Lucario! Ash shouted. His Lucario, not Karina's, slammed into the Graveler midair. Bone Rush. A staff of energy materialized, driving the wild Pokémon into the dirt. Ash's Lucario stood over the fallen enemy, growling, his aura flaring bright blue, defying the dampening field through sheer proximity to Ash. Karina's Lucario, watching from the wreckage, let out a low whine of recognition and shame. We need to go. Now, Ash ordered. He grabbed Karina, lifting her effortlessly into a fireman's carry. Bee, stick to my right. Move. They ran. 24 hours later. Viridian Gym. The recovery room smelled of antiseptic and strong tea. Karina sat on the edge of a bed, swinging her bandaged leg. The doctors had confirmed a sprain, nothing broken. Bee stood by the window, staring out at the construction crews repairing the gym courtyard. She had refused medical attention beyond basic first aid, claiming meditation would heal her bruises. The door opened. Ash walked in, carrying a tray of food. He had swapped his tactical gear for a simple black tank top and loose sweatpants. His arms were covered in faint scratches from the mountain. Soup, Ash announced, setting the tray down. Brock's recipe. It helps with the energy drain. Karina beamed. Thanks, Ash. You're a lifesaver. Literally. I thought we were pancakes back there. Ash nodded, handing her a bowl. He turned to offer one to Bee. Bee didn't take it. She turned slowly, her gray eyes locking onto his. Her expression was unreadable, stony. Why did you intervene? She asked. Ash paused, the bowl suspended in midair. Excuse me. I had the situation under control, Bee lied. Her voice was tight. A warrior does not need rescuing. You were fighting a golem with a sprained wrist, Bee, Ash pointed out gently, and your Machamp was down. I would have found a way, Bee snapped, stepping forward. The sudden aggression made Karina pause mid-slurp. Do you think we are weak? Just because we are women? Just because we aren't the monarch? Ash set the bowl down on the table. He understood immediately. It wasn't ingratitude, it was humiliation. Bee was a martial artist. Her entire identity was built on strength and self-reliance. To be saved, especially by a man she viewed as a rival, was a wound to her pride deeper than any bruise. I don't think you're weak, Ash said calmly. I think you were ambushed by tech that neutralizes your greatest asset. Tech? Bee scoffed. Excuses. True strength transcends gimmicks. If I cannot defeat a wild Pokémon with my bare hands, I have no right to be a gym leader. She clenched her fists, her knuckles white. Fight me. The room went silent. Bee, chill, Karina warned. He just saved us. I need to know, Bee said, her eyes burning into Ash. I need to know if you saved me because you were stronger, or because you were just lucky. If it was luck, I can never forgive myself. If you are stronger, then I can accept it. She dropped into a combat stance. No Pokémon. No aura tricks. Just flesh and bone. Prove your authority, sovereign. Ash looked at her. He saw the desperation in her stance. If he refused, he would insult her. If he held back, he would insult her. He sighed and rolled his neck. Okay, Ash said. Ash, are you serious? Karina asked. You haven't slept in 2 days. Clear the room, Karina, Ash said softly. Karina hesitated, then hopped off the bed on one leg. Fine. But if you break his face, Bee, Misty will kill you. The dojo. The Viridian gym had a dedicated martial arts floor, a remnant from when Giovanni used to train there. The mats were tatami, the lighting harsh and fluorescent. B stood on one side, barefoot, stripped down to her GI pants and a sports bra, her muscles coiled like steel cables. Ash stood opposite her. "Rules?" Ash asked. "Submission or knockout," B said. "Anything goes." She didn't wait for a bell. B exploded forward. She was fast, faster than the eye could easily track. She feinted a high kick, then dropped low, aiming a devastating palm strike at Ash's ribs. It was a move meant to shatter bone. Ash didn't block. He exhaled sharply and twisted his torso. The palm strike grazed his skin, burning like a rope burn. Ash stepped into her guard. This was the mistake most people made with B. They tried to keep distance. Ash closed it. He slammed his hip into hers, disrupting her center of gravity. B gasped, stumbling, but recovered instantly, spinning into a backfist. Ash ducked, weaving under the blow. He grabbed her wrist, not to restrain, but to pull. He yanked her forward, adding his strength to her momentum. They grappled. It was ugly, sweaty, and visceral. B was technically superior. Her form was textbook perfection. She landed a knee to Ash's thigh that made his leg buckle. She landed a jab to his cheek that split the skin. But Ash was heavy. He fought like a wild animal that had learned strategy. He absorbed hits that should have dropped him, his eyes never leaving hers. B swept his legs. Ash hit the mat hard. She was on him instantly, mounting his chest, driving a fist down toward his face. Ash caught her fist in his palm. The impact echoed in the silent room. They froze there. B pushing down with all her strength, Ash pushing up. Their faces were inches apart. Sweat dripped from B's forehead onto Ash's cheek. She could feel the heat radiating off him. "Is that all?" Ash gritted out. B roared, frustration pouring out of her. She abandoned the punch and went for an armbar, trying to snap his elbow. Ash didn't panic. He rolled with the pressure, stacking his weight on top of her, crushing her into the mat. He powered out of the hold using raw core strength, pinning her wrists above her head. He had her pinned. His body covered hers, locking her legs with his own. B thrashed, bucking her hips, trying to throw him off, but he was immovable. He was the mountain. "Yield," Ash breathed, his face close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. B looked up at him. She saw the blood on his cheek. She felt the iron grip on her wrists. She felt the undeniable, overwhelming masculinity of his dominance. For the first time in her life, the tension in her chest broke. It wasn't fear, it was relief. She didn't have to be the strongest person in the room anymore, he was here. Her body went slack beneath him, her breathing was ragged. "I yield," she whispered. Ash held the pin for 1 second longer, just to be sure, then released her. He rolled off, lying on his back on the mat, staring at the ceiling, gasping for air. "You hit hard," Ash wheezed. B lay there for a moment, her chest heaving. Then, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. She turned her head to look at him. "Your form is sloppy," she critiqued, though her voice lacked its usual bite. "You overextend on the grapple." "Worked, didn't it?" B laughed. It was a rusty sound. She sat up, wincing, and looked down at him. The respect in her eyes was no longer grudging. It was absolute. "Yes. It worked." The door slid open. Misty stood there, holding a tablet, looking unimpressed by the sweaty, semi-clothed display on the floor. "If you two are done wrestling," she said dryly, "we have a problem. A big one." Ash sat up, wiping the blood from his cheek. The warrior mode vanished, replaced by the sovereign. "What is it?" "The PLA just froze the gym's assets," Misty said, walking over. "They're citing unauthorized paramilitary action within a protected nature reserve. Meaning Mount Moon. They're designating you a rogue agent, Ash. They want to seize the property." B stood up, her face hardening. "They would seize the home of the man who saved us." "Politics," Ash muttered. He stood up, offering a hand to B to help her up. She took it, squeezing it firmly. "So, we have no money," Ash clarified. "Zero," Misty confirmed. "And we have a cease and desist order on the construction." Ash walked to the wall where his discarded shirt lay. He picked it up but didn't put it on. He turned to the women. Misty, the strategist. B. The vanguard. Karina hobbled in from the hallway, leaning on a crutch, Sabrina floating silently behind her. The harem was assembled. They want to play by league rules, Ash said quietly. But the league was built to facilitate battles, not to protect people. If they cut our funding, we don't need them. Ash? Misty asked warningly. What are you doing? Sabrina, Ash said. Can you broadcast a signal? Global? Sabrina's eyes glowed. I can hijack every screen in Kanto for 3 minutes. Do it. Ash walked to the center of the dojo. He didn't clean the blood off his face. He didn't put on a suit. He stood there, shirtless, bruised, radiating power. We aren't a league gym anymore, Ash declared. The air in the room shifted. Misty, draft the charter. B. Karina, you're in charge of security. Sabrina, intel. And you? B asked. Ash looked at the camera Sabrina was conjuring out of thin air. I'm going to declare war on the bureaucracy. The broadcast. Every TV screen in Shibuya, every jumbotron in Castelia City, every rotom phone in the world flickered and changed. The image wasn't polished. It was raw footage of a man standing in a dojo. He looked dangerous. Citizens of Kanto, Ash began. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. For years, the league has told you that you are safe. They told you that badges and tournaments are what matter. But the world is changing. There is a threat rising that points and scoreboards cannot stop. He looked directly into the lens. Today, Viridian City declares independence from the Pokemon League Association. We are no longer a government facility. We are a fortress. We are the shield that will hold back the dark. Any trainer who wants to learn how to survive, come to us. Any trainer who wants to play games, stay away. This is the Sovereign speaking. Viridian stands alone. The feed cut. The aftermath. In the silence of the dojo, Misty let out a long, shaky breath. Well, she said, you certainly know how to burn a bridge. We didn't need that bridge, Karina grinned, her eyes sparkling. That was incredibly hot. Can I say that? That was hot. B crossed her arms, nodding in agreement. A bold strategy, I approve. Ash looked at them. He felt the exhaustion pulling at his bones, but he also felt something else. A bond. Not just friendship, but a collective loyalty that was fiercer than anything he had felt before. They were with him. Against the league. Against Kalen. Against the world. Get some rest, Ash said. Tomorrow, the real training begins. B, you're teaching me how to not overextend on the grapple. B smirked. It will be painful. Good. Ash walked out of the dojo. As he passed Sabrina, she whispered in his mind. The silence heard you, Ash. They are afraid. Good, Ash thought back. Let them be. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The media war. If the battle for Viridian City had begun with concrete and steel, the second front was opened with flashbulbs and fiber optics. 3 days after Ash's broadcast, the city was under siege. Not by soldiers in black armor, but by a legion of news vans. They clogged Route 1, their satellite dishes turned toward the gym like the hungry mouths of babybird Pokemon. Ash stood on the newly reinforced parapet of the gym, looking down at the chaos. There are more of them than yesterday, he noted, his voice flat. 72 major networks, Sabrina replied. She was floating cross-legged in midair beside him, meditating. And 300 independent streamers. The mental noise is excruciating. It sounds like a hive of beedrill. Ash gripped the railing. I told them to stay away. You told them you were a sovereign, declaring independence. A new voice cut in. It was electric, buzzing with an energy that felt like static cling. You basically invited the entire world to come poke the bear. Ash turned. Walking across the roof, ignoring the uneven construction tiles in 6-inch platform heels, was Elisa. The Nimbasa City gym leader and supermodel didn't look like she was dressed for war zone. She wore a shock yellow coat made of synthetic feathers over a black bodysuit that shimmered with LED circuitry. Her blonde hair was styled in sharp, geometric angles. She looked like a creature from a different timeline, sleek, modern, and expensive. Elisa, Ash said, surprised. I didn't call you. No, she agreed, stopping in front of him and looking him up and down with critical blue eyes. You didn't? But I saw your little pirate broadcast. The lighting was tragic, by the way. Shadows under the eyes. It made you look like a villain. I don't care how I look. And that, Elisa said, tapping a manicured finger against his chest, is why you are losing. She gestured to the sea of reporters below. You think this is a battle of strength? It's not. It's a battle of narrative. Right now, the League is painting you as a traumatized war hero who has lost his mind. They say you're building a cult. They say Viridian is dangerous. It is dangerous, Ash countered. To the enemy, Elisa corrected. To the public, it needs to look like salvation. If you lose the people, Ash, the League will have the justification to send the Elite Four to liberate this city. Can you fight Lance? Can you fight Leon? Ash went silent. He knew the answer. He could fight them, yes. But he couldn't win a war against the entire world while protecting a city. What do you want, Elisa? I want to fix your brand, she said, a predator's smile curving her lips. I'm the best in the world at making people fall in love with things they don't understand. I'm joining your little harem. Ash choked. It's not quiet, she commanded playfully. I'm the PR manager now. Step 1. We stop hiding. We throw a party. The war room, the planning meeting was tense. Misty sat at the head of the table, looking at Elisa with undisguised suspicion. Bea and Karina were cleaning their gear in the corner, looking bored by the talk of optics. A gala? Misty repeated, skeptical. We are low on food, low on medical supplies, and we have a terrorist cell hunting us. And you want to host a black tie fundraiser? Precisely, Elisa said, projecting a hologram of the gym's main arena transformed into a ballroom. We need money. The League froze the accounts. So, we invite the ultra-wealthy. The Devon Corporation. The Sylph family. The Colossian aristocracy. We sell them the idea of the Sovereign as an exclusive protection service. I'm not a mercenary, Ash growled. You are whatever the checkbook says you are for one night, Elisa snapped, dropping the playful facade. Unless you want your Pokemon to starve? Do you have enough calcium for Bee's Machamp? Enough psychic supplements for Sabrina? The room went quiet. The reality of their logistics was grim. Fine, Ash said, rubbing his temples. We do the gala. Good, Elisa clapped her hands. But first, we need to handle the interview. Kalen has challenged you to a debate on the Global Link Network tonight. Prime time. Kalen? Ash's eyes narrowed. He wants to talk? He wants to humiliate you, Sabrina said, her eyes opening. He is a demagogue. He speaks in half-truths. I'll do it, Ash said. Ash, Misty warned. He's not a trainer. He's a politician. I need to look him in the eye, Ash said. I need to know what he is. The debate, the studio was virtual. Ash stood in the center of the Viridian dojo, a green screen behind him. Across the digital divide, projected on a massive monitor, was Lord Kalen. Kalen sat in a high-backed chair, looking relaxed, holding a glass of wine. He looked like a benevolent uncle, not a man who commanded death squads. The moderator, a Rotom drone, buzzed between them. The topic is the future of human-Pokemon relations. Lord Kalen, opening statement. Kalen smiled. It was a warm, practiced expression. Thank you. People of the world, look at history. Every major catastrophe, the rampage of Rayquaza, the darkest day, the Necrozma crisis. What is the common denominator? High-energy trainers forcing Pokemon beyond their biological limits. He gestured with his glass. We call it Mega Evolution. We call it Bond Phenomenon. But let us call it what it is. Parasitism. We drain the life force of these creatures to stroke our own egos. Mr. Ketchum represents the apex of this cruelty. He weapon Izesh love. Ash stepped forward. He felt awkward in the suit Elisa had forced him to wear. He felt like he was suffocating. It's not parasitism, Ash said, his voice rough. It's partnership. We make each other stronger. Do we? Kalen countered smoothly. Tell me, Mr. Ketchum. How many times has your Pikachu almost died for you? How many times has he been hospitalized? Is that partnership? Or is that you using a small animal as a shield against gods? The comment struck a nerve. Ash clenched his fists under the podium. He fights because he chooses to. Does he? Kalen leaned in. Or does he fight because you have conditioned him to believe he has no worth outside of battle? My organization, the Silence, seeks to free Pokemon from this burden. We seek a world where they can return to nature, uncorrupted by the chaotic energy of human ambition. "You're killing them," Ash shouted, losing his cool. "You drain their energy, you turn them into husks." "We ground them," Kalen corrected calmly. "We remove the volatile energy that causes aggression. We bring peace. You bring war, Ash. Look at Viridian. You have turned a city into a fortress. You are preparing for violence. I am preparing for tranquility." The live polling numbers flashed on the side of the screen. Kalen, 68% support. Ash, 32% support. "The world is tired of heroes, Ash," Kalen said softly. "They just want to be safe. And you are very unsafe." The feed cut. Ash stood in the silence of the dojo, his chest heaving. He had lost. He hadn't lost a battle of fists, but he had been outmaneuvered. Elisa walked in, her face grim. "Well, that could have gone better." "He's right," Ash whispered. "Excuse me, people want safety," Ash said. He looked at his hands. "I can't give them safety. I can only give them a chance to fight." Elisa walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her nails dug into the fabric of his suit. "Then stop trying to be a politician," she hissed. "Be the warlord. Tonight, at the gala. Don't apologize. Dominate." The gala, the transformation was miraculous. The Viridian gym, usually a place of sweat and concrete, was draped in silver silk and bioluminescent vines provided by the local grass types. The elite of the Pokemon world had arrived. Executives from Sylph Company, famous coordinators from Hoenn, and wealthy investors sipped champagne while gazing nervously at the grim-faced Machamp working security. Ash stood on the balcony, looking down at the party. He wore a fitted black tuxedo, tailored to hide the bulk of his muscles, but he still moved with the prowling gait of a tiger in a cage. Misty appeared beside him. She was breathtaking. She wore a deep blue gown that shimmered like water, her back exposed, revealing the faint scars of her travels. "Stop scowling," she murmured, handing him a glass of sparkling water. "Rich people are allergic to frowns." "I hate this," Ash admitted. "I can sense everyone's aura. Greed. Fear. Curiosity. It's loud." "Focus on me," Misty said. It was an echo of what he had told Sabrina. Ash looked at her. Really looked at her. In the soft light, the years of friendship seemed to compress into a single, dense point of gravity. "You look." Ash started, then cleared his throat. "You clean up okay, Misty." Misty rolled her eyes, but a blush dusted her cheeks. "You have the romantic aptitude of a slowpoke, Ketchum." Below them, the music shifted. A waltz. "Dance with me," Misty commanded. "The investors need to see the sovereign as human." "I don't dance. You have perfect footwork in battle. It's the same thing. Just don't try to sweep my leg." They moved to the floor. Ash was stiff at first, but Misty guided him. Her hand on his shoulder was warm. As they moved, the crowd parted. They were a spectacle. The monarch and the water mermaid. "Ash," Misty whispered as they spun. "About what Kalen said. About Pikachu." "Don't." "He was wrong," she said fiercely. "I was there, Ash. I saw you jump in front of that Spearow flock on day one. You don't use them as shields. You are the shield." Ash looked down at her. Her eyes were fierce, filled with a loyalty that terrified him. "I can't lose you, Mist," he confessed, his voice barely audible over the music. "If this war gets bad, you should go back to Cerulean." Misty stopped moving. The dancers around them flowed past, but she stood rooted. "Try to send me away," she dared him. "See what happens." The moment was electric. Ash leaned in, the distance between them closing. Crash. The massive aquarium tank that served as the centerpiece of the ballroom, filled with exotic water types, shattered. Glass and water exploded outward, knocking guests to the floor. Screams erupted. But the water didn't spread. It foamed. It turned a sickly, neon purple. "The water," Misty screamed. "Don't touch it." From the wreckage of the tank, a Gyarados emerged. But it wasn't right. Its eyes were bleeding black ichor. Its scales were peeling off, revealing raw, pulsing muscle underneath. It roared, but the sound was a gurgling shriek of agony. "It's a toxin." Sabrina's voice cut through the panic via telepathy. "Hydrophage. It targets water energy and turns it into acid." The Gyarados thrashed, its tail smashing a table of investors. It was blind with pain, lashing out at everything. Misty, stay back, Ash yelled. That's my Gyarados, Misty cried, horror on her face. He was in the tank for the display. He's burning. The massive serpent coiled, preparing to unleash a hyper beam. But the energy in its mouth wasn't white. It was unstable, black and purple. If it fired, it would nuke the ballroom. Clear the room, Ash roared. Bee and Karina were already moving, herding the screaming guests toward the exits. Ash ran toward the beast. Pikachu, wait, Ash ordered. No electricity. The water is conductive. You'll kill the guests. Ash slid under a swinging tail that crushed the marble floor. He was unarmed. No Pokémon. Just him and a berserk sea monster. He needed to close the beast's mouth before it fired. He leapt. He used a floating piece of debris as a step, launching himself into the air. He grabbed the Gyarados' dorsal fin, the rough scales tearing his gloves. The beast thrashed, whipping Ash through the air like a ragdoll. Ash held on, his muscles screaming. He climbed up the heaving flank of the dragon. Gyarados! Ash shouted, channeling his aura. He tried to push calm into the creature, but the toxin was like a wall of static. The dragon couldn't hear him. The energy in the Gyarados' maw flared brighter. It was seconds away from detonating. Ash reached the head. He wrapped his legs around the serpent's neck and leaned forward, grabbing the massive jaws with his bare hands. Shut up, Ash grunted. He pulled. He pulled with the strength of a man who had held the weight of the world. The veins in his neck bulged. His tuxedo jacket ripped at the seams. Slowly, agonizingly, he forced the jaws shut. The energy building up inside the Gyarados had nowhere to go. It backfired internally. The Gyarados convulsed, then went limp, crashing to the floor with Ash still clinging to its neck. Ash rolled off, coughing up water and dust. He scrambled back to the beast's head. Misty, he yelled. Full heal. Now, Misty was there instantly, sliding across the wet floor. She jammed a syringe into the soft tissue under the Gyarados' jaw. The purple foaming stopped. The dragon's breathing stabilized, though it remained unconscious. The ballroom was silent. The guests who hadn't fled were staring. They saw the monarch, soaking wet, his suit in tatters, bleeding from a dozen cuts, kneeling over the beast not to finish it off, but to stroke its snout. It's okay, Ash whispered to the unconscious dragon. I got you. Misty fell to her knees beside him. She looked at her Pokémon, then at Ash. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. You jumped on a charging Gyarados, she sobbed, the adrenaline crash hitting her. You idiot. You absolute idiot. Ash looked at her. His eyes were tired. He was in pain, Ash said simply. Misty didn't speak. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his wet shirt. She didn't care about the cameras. She didn't care about the investors. She held him as if he were the only solid thing in a dissolving world. Up on the balcony, Elisa watched the scene. She saw the guests whispering. She saw the fear turning into awe. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. It was raw. Ash, bleeding and wet, holding a crying Misty, with the fallen dragon behind them. Send, she whispered. The next morning, Ash woke up in the infirmary again. He sat up, groaning. His entire body felt like a bruise. Elisa walked in. She threw a newspaper onto his lap. The sovereign saves the elite monarch risks life to save berserk Pokémon. He fights for the bond, not the glory. The photo Elisa had taken was on the front page. Kalen won the debate, Elisa said, sitting on the edge of the bed. But you won the war. It wasn't a stunt, Ash grumbled. I know, Elisa smiled gently. That's why it worked. We have funding. Sylph Company just pledged 500 million credits. They saw you stop a biological weapon with your bare hands. Ash looked at the photo. He looked at how Misty was holding him. Is Misty okay? She's with Gyarados. He's going to make a full recovery. But Ash... Elisa's face grew serious. The toxin. It was a binary compound. It only activates when exposed to high-frequency emotional energy. The fear of the crowd triggered it. Ash went cold. They weaponized the gala. Yes. Kalen is testing us. He wanted to see if you would kill the Gyarados to save the people. He wanted to prove you were a monster. He failed. This time, Elisa said. She stood up, but now he knows you have a weakness. What weakness? You love them, Elisa said. All of them. Your Pokemon. Your friends, and he is going to use that to bleed you dry. Ash swung his legs out of bed. The pain didn't matter. The exhaustion didn't matter. Let him try, Ash said. The pressure in the room dropped, heavy and suffocating. I'm done playing defense. He walked to the window. Get the jet ready, Elisa. I'm going to the Crown Tundra. Why there? Because, Ash said, his eyes hard. That's where the old legends say the darkness started. And I need someone who understands legends. Cynthia, Elisa realized. Cynthia, Ash confirmed. It's time to bring the Queen into the game. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The hollow god. The Crown Tundra did not tolerate weakness. It was a graveyard of ambition, buried under 6 feet of permafrost and silence. Ash Ketchum trudged through the knee-deep snow, the wind howling like a dying beast. He had left the politics of Viridian far behind. Here, there were no cameras, no galas, and no sovereign. There was only the biting cold that seeped through his thermal gear and the rhythmic crunch of his boots. Pikachu, Ash murmured, his voice muffled by his scarf. Status? Pikachu, tucked inside Ash's heavy coat with only his ears exposed, chattered softly. Warm, alert. Ash checked his GPS. The signal was ghosting, scrambled by the magnetic interference of the Regi temples scattered across the landscape. He didn't need the GPS, though. He could feel her. Her aura was distinct. It wasn't a roaring fire like his, or a deep ocean like Misty's. It was like the earth itself, ancient, heavy, and undeniably present. He crested a ridge and saw it. The split decision ruins loomed against the gray sky, 2 massive temples representing the divergent paths of electric and draconic energy. But between them, someone had excavated a new entrance. Floodlights cut through the blizzard, illuminating a camp of high-tech tents. Standing at the edge of the excavation pit, staring into the dark, was a woman in a heavy black coat with fur trim. Her blonde hair whipped violently in the wind, but she stood as immobile as a statue. Ash slid down the ridge. The sound of his approach was swallowed by the storm, yet she turned before he was within 10 yards. You're loud, Ash, Cynthia said. She didn't shout, but her voice carried effortlessly. So I've been told, Ash replied, stopping beside her. He looked down into the pit. What are you doing out here, Cynthia? The world thinks you retired. I did, she said, her gray eyes tracking a snowflake as it landed on her glove. I retired from the sport. I did not retire from the truth. She gestured to the pit. Look. Ash peered over the edge. The ice had been melted away to reveal black obsidian stone. Carved into the rock were symbols that made Ash's head throb. They weren't the unknown script he was used to. These were older, jagged, violent. These ruins predate the Galar monarchy, Cynthia explained, her tone shifting into lecture mode. They predate the darkest day. They tell the story of a civilization that didn't worship Pokemon, but consumed them. Ash went rigid. Consumed? Not for food, Cynthia clarified grimly. For power. They built machines to extract infinity energy directly from the core of a Pokemon to fuel their cities. They wanted to become gods. Kalen, Ash breathed. I don't know who Kalen is, Cynthia admitted, but I know that 3 weeks ago, a private paramilitary group raided this site. They took rubbings of the walls. They took artifacts, and they left this. She pointed to a spot near the entrance. A frozen carcass of a mamoswine lay there. It wasn't wounded. It was gray, desiccated. It looked like a mummy, drained of every ounce of moisture and life. They tested a weapon here, Ash realized, kneeling by the mamoswine. He touched the fur. It crumbled to dust. The same tech that hit Viridian. So, you were involved, Cynthia said. She turned to him, her gaze sharp. I saw the news. The sovereign. The Declaration of Independence. I thought you had finally snapped under the pressure. Maybe I have, Ash said, standing up. Or maybe I'm the only one seeing the gun pointed at our heads. He looked at her. I need you, Cynthia. Not the champion. I need the historian. I need to know what they stole from here. Cynthia studied him. She saw the hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there during the Masters 8 tournament. She saw a man who had stopped playing a game and started fighting a war. Come, she said, turning toward the dark mouth of the ruin. But keep your hand on your belt. The things sleeping down there, they don't like the light. The interior of the ruin was suffocating. The air was stale, smelling of ozone and copper. Ash released Lucario to walk point. The Jackal's aura sensors were critical in the pitch blackness. Cynthia had her Garchomp out, the land shark moving silently despite its bulk, its claws clicking softly on the stone. "Here," Cynthia said, stopping in a circular chamber. She threw a flare into the center of the room. The red light hissed, illuminating the walls. Ash gasped. The mural wrapped around the entire room. It depicted a chaotic war. On one side, humans wielding staffs that fired beams of light. On the other, a swarm of Pokémon. But in the center, there was a figure. A massive, towering entity made of geometric prisms. It had no face, only a gaping maw that sucked the light from the air. "Necrozma?" Ash asked. "Something related to it," Cynthia corrected. "The text calls it the Hollow God. It is an entity from ultra space that feeds on bonds. It doesn't eat flesh. It eats the connection between two souls." She walked to the wall, tracing a carving of a trainer falling to his knees, his Pokémon turning to dust. This civilization. They summoned it. They thought they could control it to drain their enemies. Instead, it ate everything. It severed the connection between humans and Pokémon globally. It caused a dark age that lasted 1,000 years. "And Kalen wants to bring it back," Ash said, the pieces clicking together. The silence. The dampeners. He's not just suppressing energy. He's feeding it. "He's creating a banquet," Cynthia whispered. "If he summons this thing, it won't just be a region-level threat. It will strip the soul from every living thing on the planet." Suddenly, Lucario growled, a low, guttural sound that vibrated in Ash's chest. Garchomp whipped around, tail smashing a stone pillar as it hissed at the entrance tunnel. "We're not alone," Ash said, his hand snapping to a Pokeball. "I know," Cynthia said calmly. She didn't look afraid, she looked annoyed. "They've been tracking us since the ridge." From the shadows of the tunnel, eyes appeared. But they weren't the eyes of wild Pokémon. They were violet, glowing with artificial light. 6 shapes emerged. 2 Tyranitar, 2 Metagross, 2 Dragonite. They were titans. But their skin was wrong. It was dark, shifting like oil. A purple miasma leaked from their mouths. "Shadow Pokémon," Ash said, recognizing the corrupted aura. "Their hearts are closed. Artificial rage." Behind the monsters, a man in white armor stepped out. He held a staff topped with a glowing violet crystal, a miniature version of the dampener tech. "The Sovereign and the Queen," the man mocked. His voice was synthesized. "Lord Kalen sends his regards. He said you would come for the history lesson." "Surrender," Cynthia commanded. Her voice dropped an octave, resonating with the authority of the Sinnoh champion. "You are desecrating a heritage site." "Heritage?" The man laughed. "This is a battery factory, and we need fresh cells." He slammed the staff down. "Kill them." The 6 shadow Pokémon roared. The sound was distorted, mechanical. "Garchomp, Earthquake, destabilize their footing," Cynthia ordered. "Lucario, Aura Sphere, target the ceiling. Bring it down," Ash yelled. The battle erupted in the confined space. Garchomp stomped the ground. The obsidian floor shattered, sending shockwaves rippling toward the enemy. The Metagross were knocked off balance, their magnetic levitation failing against the shifting earth. But the Shadow Tyranitar didn't care. They charged through the debris, ignoring the shaking ground. One of them lunged for Cynthia. "Dragon Rush." Cynthia snapped. Garchomp cloaked herself in blue fire and intercepted the Tyranitar, slamming into it with the force of a freight train. The impact shook the ruin. "Ash, the staff!" Cynthia yelled over the noise. "It's controlling them." Ash saw it. The man in white was standing back, the crystal pulsing in time with the shadow Pokemon's attacks. "Pikachu, wait for the opening," Ash said. "Lucario, cover me." Ash ran. He ran directly at the 2 shadow Dragonite. "Suicide," the man in white sneered. "Dragonite, Hyper Beam." Both dragons opened their maws. The energy was black, crackling with negative ions. "Lucario, detect." Lucario blurred, appearing in front of Ash. He created a hexagonal barrier. The twin hyper beams slammed into it. The force was immense. Lucario's feet slid backward, carving grooves into the stone. The barrier began to crack. Hold it, Ash gritted his teeth, feeling Lucario's strain through their bond. The beams ended. Smoke filled the tunnel. Now, Pikachu, Volt tackle. Ash threw Pikachu. The yellow mouse spun in the air, electricity exploding around him. He became a golden comet. He shot through the smoke, bypassing the Dragonite, aiming straight for the man in white. Metagross, intercept. The man panicked. A shadow Metagross teleported into Pikachu's path, raising a massive steel leg to crush him. Garchomp. Cynthia's voice cut through the chaos. From the darkness above, Garchomp dropped like a meteor. She didn't use a move. She just used her mass. She landed on the Metagross, pinning it to the ground for a split second. That second was enough. Pikachu slammed into the man's chest. The impact threw the commander into the wall. The staff flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. The crystal shattered. The violet glow in the shadow Pokemon's eyes flickered. They stopped attacking, confused, clutching their heads as the artificial rage disconnected. It's over, Ash panted, stepping over a groaning Tyranitar. Is it? Cynthia asked sharply. She pointed to the ceiling. Cracks were spreading rapidly from where Lucario's aura sphere had hit earlier. The structural integrity, compromised by the earthquake and the hyperbeams, was failing. The mountain is coming down, Ash realized. Run. They recalled their Pokemon and sprinted. The tunnel collapsed behind them, stones the size of cars crushing the spot where they had just stood. They burst out of the excavation pit and into the snow just as the ground behind them imploded, sealing the ruins forever. They tumbled into the snowdrifts, gasping for air, the adrenaline fading into the biting cold of the blizzard. The cave they found shelter in a shallow ice cave a mile from the ruins. The storm had worsened. It was a whiteout. Travel was impossible. Ash started a fire using a handful of solid fuel tablets from his pack. The blue flame cast long, dancing shadows on the ice walls. Cynthia sat on the other side of the fire, shivering slightly. She had lost her heavy coat in the scramble. Here, Ash said, shrugging off his parka. Don't be a hero, Ash, Cynthia chattered, her teeth clicking. You'll freeze. I've got the aura, he said, draping the coat over her shoulders. Keeps my core temp up. You're just human. Cynthia pulled the coat tight around her, the warmth of his body still lingering in the fabric. She looked at him. He was sitting in just his tactical sweater, rubbing his hands over the fire. You fight like a wild thing, she noted. No commands. Just instinct. It's reckless. It worked. This time, she stared into the fire. That commander. He said Kalen was waiting for us. They knew we would come. We are dancing to their tune, Ash. We know what they want now, Ash said. The Hollow God. We know the endgame. And how do we stop a god that eats bonds? Cynthia asked quietly. How do you fight something that turns your greatest strength into a weakness? If we fight with our Pokemon, we feed it. If we fight without them, we die. Ash went silent. He poked the fire with a stick. We don't fight it with Pokemon, Ash said slowly. We fight it with the world. What? Kalen thinks bonds are a weakness. He thinks they are a string that can be cut. But he's wrong. Bonds aren't just between a trainer and a Pokemon. They're between people, between cities, between regions. Ash looked up at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. He wants to isolate us. He wants us to be afraid of our own power. So we do the opposite. We unite the champions. All of them. We overwhelm him with so much noise he chokes on it. Cynthia looked at him. She had known Ash Ketchum for years. She had seen him as a chaotic challenger, a lucky kid, a powerful monarch. But she had never seen him as a leader. Not truly. Until now. He wasn't asking for permission. He was formulating a global strategy. You want to call a summit, Cynthia surmised. I want to draft an army, Ash corrected. And I need a general. I have Misty for the politics. I have Bee and Karina for the vanguard. I have Sabrina for intelligence. But I need someone who commands respect from Lance, from Steven, from Leon. He reached across the fire, extending a hand. I need the queen. Cynthia looked at his hand. It was scarred, rough, and steady. She thought about the ruins. The darkness. The emptiness of a world without that spark between human and monster. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool, his was burning hot. I stepped down because I was tired, Ash, she confessed, her voice soft. "I was tired of the pedestal. I wanted to just be Cynthia." "You can be Cynthia," Ash said, tightening his grip. "I don't need the champion, I need you." The air in the cave changed. The wind outside howled, but inside, there was a sudden, intense stillness. Cynthia pulled on his hand, not letting go. She moved around the small fire, scooting closer to him until their knees touched. "It's cold," she whispered. "Yeah," Ash breathed. "You said your aura keeps you warm." "It does." Cynthia leaned in. She rested her head on his shoulder, pulling his coat, and him, closer. It wasn't purely romantic, it was a survival instinct, a need for warmth in the frozen void. But as she settled against him, she felt the steady thrum of his heart. It was slow, powerful. "If we do this," she murmured against his neck, "if we go to war against a god, you have to promise me one thing." "Anything. Don't die," she said fiercely. "I am done burying legends." Ash wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. The smell of her, old books, vanilla, and ice, filled his senses. "I promise," Ash said. They sat there in the silence, two titans huddled against the dark, while the storm raged outside. The return 2 days later, the storm broke. Ash and Cynthia emerged from the tundra. They didn't walk as separate entities. They moved with a synchronized stride. A sleek black jet, Viridian 1, was waiting on the nearest airstrip. Elisa stood by the ramp, wrapped in a fur coat that cost more than the plane. She watched them approach. She saw Cynthia wearing Ash's coat. She saw the way Ash instinctively scanned the perimeter while Cynthia checked the logistics. Elisa smiled. "Welcome back, Monarch," she called out. "And, Lady Cynthia, I assume the recruitment drive was successful?" Cynthia walked up the ramp, passing Elisa. She paused, her gray eyes flashing with a new, dangerous light. "It wasn't a recruitment," Cynthia said, "it was an awakening." She boarded the plane. Ash stopped by Elisa. "Did you get the files from the ruins?" Elisa asked. "We got more than files," Ash said. "We got a target." "Where?" "The sky," Ash said, looking up at the clouds. "Kalen isn't on the ground, Elisa. He's building his god in orbit. He's using the satellites." Elisa paled. "The global link satellites? Every time we trade a Pokemon, every time we battle online. We're sending energy up," Ash said grimly. "We've been feeding the beast for years." He walked up the ramp. "Get me a line to Leon," Ash commanded. "And tell Brock to get his Steelix ready. We're going to need heavy artillery." "Brock?" Elisa asked, confused. "Pewter City is quiet." Ash stopped. He felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest, a phantom severance in the aura. "Ash? Call Brock," Ash said, his voice trembling slightly. "Now." Elisa pulled out her phone. She dialed. Silence. She tried again. "No signal," she said. "Pewter is offline." Ash turned back, his face a mask of fury. "Kalen knew I was in the tundra," Ash realized. "He didn't send the kill squad to stop me. He sent them to distract me." "Distract you from what?" "From the real target." Ash slammed his fist into the side of the jet. "Get us in the air, full throttle to Pewter City." Pewter City Gym. The smoke was still rising. The rock garden, usually a place of zen and stability, was a crater. In the center of the ruin, Brock lay face down in the dirt. His clothes were shredded. Around him, the remains of his onyx lay scattered, not unconscious, but crumbled. The gray boulders that made up the rock snake's body were dull, lifeless, turning to dust in the wind. A hologram flickered to life above the devastation. It was Kalen's insignia. "You build your fortress, Ash," the recording looped, "but you forgot your foundation." The Chapter 6. The fall of Pewter. The silence of Pewter City was heavier than the stone that built it. Ash stepped off the ramp of the jet, his boots sinking into a layer of fine, gray powder that covered the runway. It wasn't snow. It wasn't ash from a fire. It was grit. "Stay close," Ash ordered, his voice devoid of inflection. Cynthia flanked his right, her Garchomp already out, eyes scanning the smoke-choked skyline. Elisa stayed by the jet, phone pressed to her ear, trying to coordinate with emergency services that weren't answering. They moved toward the gym, or what was left of it. The Pewter City Gym, a fortress of rock that had stood for generations, was cracked open like an egg. The massive boulders that formed its roof had collapsed inward. But it was the silence that terrified Ash. There were no sirens. No cries for help. Just the wind whistling through the jagged gaps in the stone. Ash, Cynthia said sharply, grabbing his arm. Look at the ground. Ash looked down. The gray powder, it wasn't just dust, it was sparkling faintly. He knelt, rubbing the grid between his gloved fingers. He felt a faint, dying echo of energy. Ground-type resonance. It's not debris, Ash whispered, his stomach turning over, it's them. He stood up and ran. He scrambled over the rubble of the entrance hall, ignoring the jagged rebar tearing at his clothes. He reached the main arena. The sight brought him to a halt so sudden it felt like a physical blow. The arena was a graveyard. The Geodude, the Graveler, the Rhyhorn. They were gone. In their place were piles of that same gray dust, shaped vaguely like the creatures they had once been before collapsing into entropy. In the center of the devastation, a single pillar of rock remained standing. Chained to it was a man. Brock. Ash vaulted the railing, sliding down the scree slope. Brock hung limp in the chains, his head bowed. He was covered in cuts, his clothes shredded. But the worst wound was unseen. He looked hollow. The vibrant, nurturing energy that usually radiated from the Pokémon breeder was gone, replaced by a cold vacuum. Lying at Brock's feet was a pile of gray rocks. They weren't dust yet. They were cracked, dull, and lifeless. A massive stone snake head lay amongst them, its eyes clouded and dark. Onyx. No, Ash choked out. He reached Brock, ripping the chains from the stone with a burst of aura-enhanced strength that sparked blue lightning around his hands. Brock collapsed into Ash's arms. He was terrifyingly light. Ash? Brock rasped, his eyes struggling to open. They were unfocused. Don't let them eat. I've got you, Ash said, lowering him gently. Hold on, Brock. Misty is bringing the med-evac. Onyx, Brock wheezed, his hand groping blindly for the pile of rocks. Tears cut tracks through the dust on his face. I couldn't hold the bond. They pulled too hard. He crumbled, Ash. He just crumbled. Ash looked at the dead Onyx. He felt the emptiness where the life force should be. It hadn't just been killed. It had been drained of its very existence. The bond between Brock and Onyx, the first bond Brock ever forged, had been forcibly ripped out, and the trauma had shattered the Pokémon's physical form. Who did this? Ash asked. His voice was a low rumble, like an earthquake deep underground. The pale man, Brock whispered, consciousness fading. He said, You were next, he said. The fortress will fall. Brock went limp. Ash, Cynthia called from the ridge, we have company. Ash didn't look up. He placed his hand on Brock's chest, feeling the weak, thready heartbeat. Pikachu, Ash said. Pikachu stood by the dead Onyx, his ears flat, his tail twitching with a mixture of grief and pure, unadulterated voltage. Kill them. It wasn't a battle command, it was a sentence. The ambushers emerged from the shadows of the ruined stands. They were the Silence, Kalen's elite. But these weren't the grunts from Viridian. These wore white armor, sleek and faceless, armed with staffs that pulsed with the violet anti-energy. There were 20 of them. Ash stood up. He didn't turn to face them immediately. He adjusted his gloves. You came to finish the job? Ash asked, his back to them. We came to collect the breeder, the leader said, his voice amplified. His biology is unique. He produces a surplus of nurturing energy. Lord Kalen requires it for the battery. Ash turned. His eyes were glowing. Not the soft blue of a hero's aura, but a jagged, blinding indigo. The air pressure in the arena dropped so sharply that the dust on the floor began to levitate. You killed his family, Ash said. They were just rocks, the leader scoffed, and you were just a boy playing king. Ash disappeared. He didn't use a Pokémon move. He used pure, aura-infused speed. He crossed the 50 meters between them in a heartbeat. He appeared in front of the leader. The leader flinched, raising his staff. Ash grabbed the staff. The violet energy flared, trying to dampen Ash's power, trying to suck his aura dry. Ash pushed back. He flooded the staff with so much raw, chaotic aura that the dampener crystal overloaded. It screamed, turned white-hot, and shattered. Ash didn't stop. He drove his fist into the leader's helmet. The impact sounded like a gunshot. The helmet cracked, and the man flew backward, smashing into a concrete pillar with bone-shattering force. Fire! The second-in-command shrieked. 19 energy rifles opened up. Garchomp, Sandstorm, Cynthia commanded from the ridge. No, Ash roared. He waved his hand. A wave of blue force erupted from him, deflecting the plasma bolts. Pikachu. Thunderbolt, maximum output, don't leave a single circuit working. Pikachu leapt into the air. He didn't look like a mouse anymore. He looked like a storm god trapped in a small body. The thunderbolt that came down wasn't a jagged line. It was a pillar of light that engulfed the entire squad. The screams were drowned out by the roar of electricity. Armor fused. Weapons melted. The rock floor turned to glass. When the light faded, the squad was down. Smoke rose from their armor. They were alive, barely, but they wouldn't be fighting again. Ash stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving. The indigo glow in his eyes faded, leaving them dull and hollow. He walked back to Brock, picked him up bridal style, and walked past the stunned Cynthia. "Burn it," Ash said as he passed her. "What?" "The gym," Ash said, not looking back. "Burn the bodies of the Pokémon. Don't let them take samples. Give them a funeral." Viridian City. The war room 6 hours later. The mood in the Viridian gym was suffocating. Brock was in the ICU, stabilized by a team of Chanseys and Audinoes that Misty had flown in from the Pokémon Center HQ. Ash stood at the head of the tactical table. He had showered, but he hadn't slept. He wore a fresh black shirt, the sleeves rolled up, revealing the bandages on his arms. Around the table sat the harem, his council. Misty, eyes red from crying, sat with her hands clasped tight. Sabrina, pale and withdrawn, sensing the psychic scars of the event. Bee and Karina, grim-faced, treating the meeting like a pre-battle briefing. Elisa, managing the media blackout. Cynthia, standing at Ash's right hand, radiating cold fury. "Brock will live," Misty said quietly. "But he can't hear his Pokémon anymore. The trauma severed his connection to the infinity energy field. He's just a normal human now." A glass cracked in Ash's hand. Blood dripped onto the table. He didn't seem to notice. "He targeted pewter because it was the physical defense," Ash said, his voice raspy. "Rock and ground." He removed the anchor. "He's picking us apart," Bee said, slamming her fist on the table. "He knows our locations. He knows our rosters. We're fighting a shadow." "We aren't fighting a shadow," Ash corrected. "We're fighting a parasitic god." He looked at the map of Kanto on the table. "Cynthia told me what they found in the tundra. This entity. It feeds on passivity. It feeds on fear. Kalen is trying to make us afraid to use our power. He wants us to hide." Ash looked up, meeting the eyes of every woman in the room. "We are done hiding. We are done playing by the League's rules of engagement." "What are you proposing?" Elisa asked nervously. "Martial law. Total mobilization," Ash declared. He pointed to the map. "Misty. I want Cerulean City turned into a naval blockade. Nothing enters the bay without your permission. Use the wild Gyarados pods. If it's not a registered vessel, sink it." Misty nodded slowly. "Understood. B. Karina. You take the ground. I want a perimeter established around Viridian and Pallet Town. 10 miles out. Any silence unit found within that zone is to be engaged with lethal force. No captures. We don't have the cells." B smiled. "A sharp, terrifying thing. It will be done." "Sabrina. You're the radar. I need you to link with every psychic type in the region. Find the blind spots. Find where the satellites are focusing their beams." "It will hurt," Sabrina whispered, "to hold that much data." "I know," Ash said softly, "but I need you. I'll do it." "Elisa," Ash turned to the model. "Stop the spin. Tell the world the truth. Tell them pewter fell. Tell them Onyx is dead. Make them angry. I want every trainer in Kanto looking at the sky with hate in their eyes." "And you?" Cynthia asked. "What will the Sovereign do?" Ash walked to the window, looking out at the fortress city he was building. "I'm going to bait the trap." The roof later that night, the wind picked up. Ash stood on the roof of the gym, watching the construction drones weld armor plates onto the outer walls. "You're bleeding again." Cynthia walked out of the shadows. She held a roll of bandages. Ash looked at his hand. The glass cut had reopened, it's fine. Cynthia ignored him. She took his hand, unwrapped the bloody gauze, and began to dress the wound with practiced efficiency. Her fingers were cool against his feverish skin. You scared them today, Ash, she said quietly. Good, they should be scared. Not the enemy, Cynthia said, looking up at him. Your friends. Misty. Karina. They've never seen you like this. Cold. Ruthless. You ordered a kill on that squad in Pewter. They hurt Brock. I know. She finished the bandage and held his hand for a moment longer than necessary. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying. Be careful. The aura reflects the heart. If your heart becomes ice, you might not be able to thaw it out. Ash looked away, toward the north where Pewter lay in ruins. I can't be the kid from Pallet Town anymore, Cynthia. That kid would try to befriend Kaylin. That kid would try to find the good in everyone. Ash squeezed her hand. That kid would let you all die. I won't do that. Cynthia stepped closer. The gap between them vanished. She reached up, cupping his jaw, forcing him to look at her. We aren't asking you to save us, Ash. We are standing beside you. Don't forget that. You are the sovereign, yes. But you are also the man we chose. She leaned in, kissing him. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was desperate, fueled by grief and the adrenaline of war. It tasted of salt and iron. Ash responded instantly, his arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He buried his face in her hair, breathing her in, using her presence to anchor himself against the dark tide of rage threatening to consume him. They broke apart, breathless. Don't lose yourself, Cynthia whispered, her forehead resting against his. If you become a monster to fight a monster, Kaylin wins. Ash closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of her, the psychic hum of Sabrina monitoring the perimeter below, the water sense of Misty in the west. I'm here, Ash said. I'm still here. Suddenly, the sky lit up. Not with lightning. With a beam of violet light. It struck the ground miles away, near the Indigo Plateau. The shockwave rattled the gym. Ash's eyes snapped open. The tenderness vanished. He's accelerating, Ash said. He's not waiting for the battery to fill. He's starting the harvest. He tapped his comms earpiece. All stations. Red alert. The siege has begun. The siege begins the following days were a blur of violence. The silence didn't attack in a single wave. They attacked everywhere, all at once. Small squads hit power plants, trying to cut the grid. Drones dropped dampener spikes into the forests, driving wild Pokemon insane. But Viridian held. Bee and Karina were a whirlwind of destruction on the ground. We see a montage of their defense. Bee catching a Shadow Machamp's punch and shattering its arm with a precise strike. Karina, moving so fast on her skates she was a blur, her Mega Lucario tearing through drones like wet paper. Misty locked down the waterways. Her Gyarados, recovered and fueled by vengeance, sank 3 stealth subs trying to infiltrate the city's aqueducts. Sabrina sat in the center of the gym, floating in a sensory deprivation tank, her mind spread like a net over the city, intercepting teleportation coordinates and feeding them to Ash. And Ash. Ash was everywhere. He didn't sleep. He rode Charizard from hot zone to hot zone. He was a demon on the battlefield. Trainers who saw him whispered that he didn't even issue commands anymore. He and his Pokemon moved as a single organism. But for every victory, the cost grew. The supply lines were cut. The city was running on emergency generators. The civilians were terrified. The ultimatum day 4 of the siege. A hologram appeared in the sky above Viridian City. It was Kaylin. Massive, distorted, looking down like a god. Ash Ketchum, the voice boomed, shaking the windows. You fight bravely. But you are fighting a math equation you cannot solve. The image changed. It showed the Indigo Plateau, the headquarters of the Pokemon League. Around the plateau, a massive, swirling vortex of violet energy was forming. The Hollow God is hungry, Kaylin announced. I have activated the primary siphon at the League HQ. In 12 hours, the plateau will be consumed. The energy released will be enough to overwrite the reality of this world. Ash stood on the balcony, watching the projection. Come to me, Sovereign, Kaylin challenged. Bring your harem. Bring your bonds. Come and feed the new age. or stay in your fortress and watch the history of your world turn to ash. The hologram faded. Silence fell over the war room. It's a trap, Misty said immediately. He wants us to leave the fortress. If we go to the plateau, we're fighting on his turf, right under the siphon. If we don't go, Cynthia said grimly, the League is destroyed. The history, the archives, the symbol of our society, gone. It's not just symbols, Ash said. There are thousands of people at the plateau. Staff, trainers, referees. He turned to the group. He looked at each of them. They were tired, bruised, pushed to their limits. This is it, Ash said. The final push. He walked to the weapons rack and picked up his belt. I'm going to the plateau. I'm going to rip that siphon out of the sky. We're going with you, Karina said, stepping forward. No, Ash said. Excuse me. Bee bristled. I said no, you have to hold Viridian. If I fail, if he kills me, this city is the last safe harbor. You have to protect the people. You can't take him alone, Ash, Misty yelled. He has a god. I won't be alone, Ash said. He looked at the corner of the room. Shadows coalesced. A figure stepped out. It wasn't human. It was Mewtwo. The genetic Pokemon looked at Ash with cold, purple eyes. You called, Mewtwo projected telepathically. I did, Ash said. You want to protect Pokemon from being exploited? This is your fight too. Mewtwo floated forward, hovering beside Ash. The entity he summons is an abomination, Mewtwo agreed. It offends me. I will assist you, Chosen One. Ash turned back to the girls. I'm taking Mewtwo, and I'm taking Cynthia. Cynthia blinked, then nodded slowly. The Queen and the Sovereign. The rest of you, Ash ordered, his voice cracking slightly. Hold the line. Don't let them take our home. Misty walked up to him. She didn't care about Mewtwo. She grabbed Ash by the collar and pulled him down. Come back, she threatened, tears in her eyes. If you die, I will travel to the afterlife and drown you myself. Ash smiled. A real smile, for the first time in days. Deal. Departure. Ash and Cynthia mounted Charizard. Mewtwo floated alongside them. They took off, banking hard toward the Indigo Plateau. Behind them, Viridian City shrank. The fortress. The home he had built. The women he loved. Ahead, the sky was purple, swirling with the hunger of a dark god. Ash tightened his grip on Charizard's reins. Let's go kill a god, Ash whispered. Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. The Sovereign's decree. The sky above the Indigo Plateau was no longer the sky. It was a bruise. Violet clouds churned in a slow, hypnotic spiral, dragging the atmosphere into a central point directly above the League Stadium. The air was thin, tasting of ozone and sulfur. Gravity felt wrong here. Heavy in some places, dangerously light in others, shifting with the pulse of the vortex. Ash crouched low on Charizard's neck, his eyes protected by tactical goggles. To his left, Cynthia rode her Togekiss, her white coat snapping violently in the updraft. To his right, floating effortlessly in a sphere of psychic distortion, was Mewtwo. We are entering the event horizon, Mewtwo projected, his mental voice cool and detached. The laws of physics are merely suggestions inside that zone. Can you hold the shield? Ash shouted over the roaring wind. I am the strongest Pokemon in existence, Mewtwo replied, though Ash detected a strain in the telepathy. I can hold it. But not forever. The hunger of that entity, it gnaws. Incoming. Cynthia warned. The clouds ahead parted. A swarm of black shapes dived toward them. They were Aerodactyl, dozens of them. But like the Pokemon in Pewter, they were wrong. Their rocky skin was streaked with glowing purple veins, and their jaws dripped with the null energy sludge. They are mindless, Cynthia analyzed instantly. Projectiles, not combatants. Break formation. Ash ordered. Charizard rolled left, dodging a hyper-accelerated rock slide. Ash didn't need to issue a command. Charizard felt Ash's intent through his knees and banked hard, unleashing a flamethrower that turned the lead Aerodactyl into slag. Togekiss, dazzling gleam. Cynthia commanded. Her fairy type lit up the dark sky like a flashbang. The radiant light seared the corrupted Aerodactyls, causing them to screech and scatter. Mewtwo. Ash signaled. The clone Pokemon raised a three-fingered hand. Psystrike. It wasn't a beam. It was a localized detonation of mental force. A shockwave rippled out, crushing the skeletal wings of 10 Aerodactyls simultaneously. They fell from the sky like stones. "The landing zone is the main stadium," Ash yelled, pointing to the colossal structure below. "Drop us there." Viridian City, the northern perimeter 50 miles away, the sky was a different kind of hell. It was choked with smoke. Bee stood atop a pile of rubble that used to be a toll booth. Her breathing was heavy, sweat matting her hair to her forehead. Her Machamp stood beside her, his forearms bruised and shaking. In front of them, Route 2 was a sea of madness. Thousands of wild Pokémon, Rattata, Pidgey, Mankey, Nidoran, were surging toward the city. They weren't attacking with strategy. They were a tide of flesh and teeth, driven mad by the dampener spikes Kalen had dropped into the forest. "They don't stop," Bee whispered, watching the wave crash against the hastily erected barricades. "They just climb over the fallen." "Conservation of energy," Karina's voice came over the comms. She was holding the western gate. "They aren't using moves. They're just using mass. We can't fight them all, Bee. We'll run out of stamina before they run out of bodies." "We hold," Bee growled. Ash gave us an order. A massive Ursaring, its eyes glowing violet, smashed through the barricade. It roared, swiping at a young trainer from the volunteer militia. Bee moved. She didn't use a Pokémon. She vaulted off the rubble, sprinting across the broken pavement. She slid between the Ursaring's legs, grabbed the militia boy by the collar, and threw him to safety. As the Ursaring turned, Bee's Machamp intercepted it. Dynamic punch. The impact cracked the Ursaring's jaw, sending the bear stumbling back. But 3 Raticate immediately leapt onto Machamp's back, biting deep. "Machamp!" Bee screamed. "Starmie! Hydro pump!" A blast of high-pressure water swept the Raticate off Machamp. Misty slid down from the aqueduct, her Starmie spinning rapidly beside her. "Regroup," Misty ordered, her face smeared with grime. "Fall back to the secondary line. We can't hold the outer perimeter." "We can't retreat," Bee argued, kicking a Nidorino away. "If we give them the outer district, they'll be in the residential zone. If we die here, they get the residential zone anyway," Misty snapped. She grabbed Bee's arm. "Ash isn't here to be the hero, Bee. We have to be the generals. Sacrifice the pawns to save the king. Pull back." Bee looked at the endless wave of frenzied Pokémon. She looked at her exhausted Machamp. She gritted her teeth. "Fall back," Bee roared to her line. "Retreat to the inner wall. Move." As they ran, the violet sky above pulsated. Every time it pulsed, the wild Pokémon shrieked in unison, a chorus of agony that tore at the defenders' hearts. The Indigo Plateau Charizard slammed into the turf of the Indigo Stadium, his claws tearing up the manicured grass. Ash slid off, boots hitting the ground. Cynthia landed gracefully beside him. Mewtwo hovered, scanning the perimeter. The stadium was empty of people, but full of noise. The air hummed with a sound that vibrated the teeth, the sound of reality being stressed to its breaking point. In the center of the arena, where the torch usually burned, stood the siphon. It was a monolith of black metal, 50 feet tall, etched with the same ruins Ash had seen in the Crown Tundra. Above it, the violet vortex funneled energy down into a singularity. Standing at the base of the siphon was Lord Kalen. He wasn't wearing his suit anymore. He was wearing armor made of the same black obsidian, pulsating with veins of light. He didn't look human. His skin was translucent, revealing purple energy flowing where blood should be. "You are late, Sovereign." Kalen's voice didn't come from his mouth, it came from the air itself. "Shut it down, Kalen," Ash shouted, walking forward. The pressure was immense. It felt like walking fast underwater. Every step required conscious effort. "Shutdown is impossible," Kalen smiled. "The connection is made. The Hollow God is already here. It is just putting on its skin." He gestured to the empty stands. "Do you feel it, Ash? The silence? No cheering crowds. No frantic commands. Just peace." "It's not peace." Cynthia stepped forward, her Garchomp growling low. "It's death. You are erasing the soul of the world." "I am curing the infection," Kalen corrected, "and you 3. You are the strongest antibodies." He raised a hand. The ground of the stadium erupted. 4 massive pillars of rock shot up, encasing the arena in a cage. From the shadows of the pillars, shapes emerged. They were clones. But not like Mewtwo. They were grotesque, unfinished mockeries of the champion's aces. A Charizard with melting wings. A Garchomp with no eyes. A Metagross that was just a mass of screaming metal. Silence. Collected DNA samples from every battle you fought, Kalen explained. Imperfect, yes. But they don't need to be perfect. They just need to be hungry. The abominations charge. Mewtwo, handle the siphon, Ash ordered. Cynthia, take the left. I have the right. Understood, Mewtwo replied. The clone flew straight for the black monolith, ignoring the monsters. A melting Charizard lunged at Ash. It opened its mouth, spewing a torrent of black sludge instead of fire. Pikachu, dodge. Iron Tail. Pikachu moved, but he was sluggish. The proximity to the siphon was dampening his speed. He barely cleared the sludge, his tail striking the beast's neck with a dull thud instead of a crack. The field is too strong, Ash realized. It's suppressing the kinetic energy. Cynthia was struggling too. Her Garchomp was fighting the eyeless clone, but her movements were heavy. The bond, the telepathic link, was filled with static. It's eating our commands, Cynthia yelled, ducking under a swipe from a twisted melodic. Ash looked at Kalen. The man was laughing, watching them struggle like insects in a jar. You cannot win with Pokemon here, Kalen taunted. This is a no-battle zone. The physics of your moves do not apply. Ash stopped. A sludge Charizard charged him. Ash didn't issue a command. He didn't dodge. He closed his eyes. He reached deep inside himself. Past the fear. Past the exhaustion. Past the trainer identity. He found the spark that Lucario had shown him years ago. The aura. The life force that existed in all things, regardless of physics. Pikachu, Ash whispered. He didn't speak to the Pokemon. He spoke to the energy connecting them. Come to me. Pikachu froze. Then, he dematerialized. He turned into a streak of pure yellow light. He didn't use Volt Tackle. He didn't use Quick Attack. He became energy itself. The streak shot into Ash's chest. Ash's eyes snapped open. They were no longer brown. They were electric yellow. Sparks didn't fly off him. They were him. His hair spiked up, crackling with static. The air around him ionized instantly. What? Kalen's smile faltered. Ash moved. He didn't run. He flashed. He appeared in front of the sludge Charizard. He raised a hand. It wasn't a human hand anymore. It was a claw of condensed lightning. Thunder Punch. Ash drove his fist into the monster's chest. There was no resistance. The monster exploded, not into gore, but into dust. The energy holding it together was overridden by Ash's superior charge. Ash turned to Kalen. His voice layered with the chirp of 1,000 birds. You want to rewrite the rules? Ash asked. Fine, my turn. Bond phenomenon. Cynthia gasped, watching him. No. That's complete fusion. You are breaking the laws of nature. Kalen screamed. You cannot hold that much energy. You will burn out. I am the sovereign, Ash stated. The voice was calm, terrifyingly absolute. He raised his hand toward the sky, and I decree, this battle is not over. A massive bolt of lightning struck Ash from the vortex itself. He didn't deflect it. He absorbed it. He acted as a lightning rod for the entire storm. Cynthia. Ash roared, his body glowing so bright it was hard to look at. Sync with Garchomp. Do it now. Don't command her. Be her. Cynthia hesitated only a fraction of a second. She saw what Ash was doing. He was manually overriding the dampener field by saturating it with so much biological energy that it couldn't process the load. She closed her eyes. She felt the dragon energy of her partner. She let go of herself. Blue flames erupted around Cynthia. When she opened her eyes, her pupils were vertical slits. She moved with the predatory grace of a shark. Mewtwo. Ash signaled. Mewtwo, hovering near the siphon, looked down. Impressive. You are brute-forcing reality. Mewtwo expanded his psychic field, creating a bubble of stability around the three of them. Ash, Cynthia, and Mewtwo stood in a triangle formation. We push, Ash commanded. They charged the siphon. Viridian City, the inner sanctum, Sabrina screamed. She was floating in the sensory tank in the gym's basement, but her body arched violently, water splashing over the sides. Sabrina. Elisa ran to the tank. What is it? Ash, Sabrina gasped, her nose bleeding. He just turned into a star. The psychic feedback, it's blinding. Is he alive? He's furious. Sabrina grabbed the edge of the tank, her knuckles white. He's tearing the dampener field apart from the inside. The signal, it's clearing up. Outside, on the battlements. B was back to back with Karina. They were surrounded. A wave of corrupted Machoke was closing in. Suddenly, Karina's Lucario stood up straighter. His ears pricked. The dull glaze over his eyes vanished. He looked at Karina. Master, the voice was clear in her head. I can hear you. Karina's eyes widened. She felt the keystone on her glove growing warm. The static was gone. The connection was back. B. Karina yelled, grinning wildly. The line is open. B felt it too. Her Machamp flexed, the tremors stopping. He roared, a sound of pure, unbridled power. They messed up, B said, cracking her knuckles. Karina tapped her keystone. Lucario, Mega Evolve. A burst of light illuminated the night. Mega Lucario emerged, his aura blazing like a sun. Let's show them what a real bond looks like, Karina cheered. Machamp, Gigantamax. B ordered. She didn't have a power spot, but the residual energy leaking from Ash's decree at the plateau was flooding the ley lines. The sheer excess energy allowed the transformation. Machamp grew, and grew, until he towered over the city walls, a burning giant of red energy. The wild Pokémon faltered, terrified by the sudden appearance of the Titans. Counterattack. Misty's voice rang out over the city speakers. Drive them back. The Harem pushed. And this time, they didn't just hold the line, they broke the wave. The Indigo Plateau Ash, still wreathed in lightning, and Cynthia, cloaked in dragonfire, smashed through Kalen's defenses. Kalen screamed in frustration. He fired blasts of void energy from the siphon, but Mewtwo intercepted them, deflecting the shots with barriers of hard light. You are obsolete. Kalen shrieked, his armor cracking as the energy overflowed. The Hollow God cannot be stopped by biology. We aren't biology, Ash said, appearing directly in front of Kalen. He grabbed Kalen by the throat armor. The electricity from Ash's body arced into Kalen's suit. We are the story, Ash growled, and you're just the footnote. Ash wound up for a final blow. But Kalen smiled, a jagged, broken smile. Exactly, Kalen whispered. I am the key. Kalen reached back and slammed his hand onto the siphon's control interface. Protocol. Consumption. The siphon didn't explode, it imploded. The violet vortex above collapsed instantly, sucking everything into a single point, including Kalen, including the siphon, and including Ash. Ash! Cynthia screamed, lunging for him. She grabbed his hand. But the gravity was too strong. It was a black hole. It dragged Ash toward the center. Cynthia dug her heels into the ground, Garchomp biting onto her coat to anchor her. Let go, Ash yelled, his lightning form flickering. It's going to take you too. Never, Cynthia cried, her eyes wild. Mewtwo flew in, grabbing Ash's other arm. The psychic type strained, his body trembling. The mass. It is infinite. We cannot pull him out. Ash looked at the singularity. He saw Kalen's face dissolving into the void, laughing. Kalen had sacrificed himself to become the seed of the god. If Ash stayed, he would be eaten. If he pulled away, the singularity would expand and consume the world. He had to plug the hole. He looked at Cynthia. He saw the terror in her eyes. Tell Misty I'm sorry, Ash said. No, Ash, don't you dare. Ash released his aura. He didn't pull away. He pushed Cynthia and Mewtwo back. The force of the blast sent them flying out of the event horizon. Ash turned and let the gravity take him. He flew straight into the singularity. Pikachu, Ash whispered to the light inside his chest. Let's finish this. He collided with the core of the Hollow God. There was a flash of white light. Then silence. The vortex vanished. The siphon vanished. The stadium was empty, save for a massive crater. Cynthia lay on the grass, staring at the empty spot where Ash had been. Ash, she whispered. Snow began to fall. Not cold snow, but soft, glowing particles of light. He was gone. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, The Void Walkers. There was no pain in the end. Only cold. Ash floated in a space that defied geometry. There was no up or down, no light or shadow. There was only a suffocating, velvet silence. The type of silence that didn't just lack sound, but actively consumed it. He looked at his hands. They were translucent, fading into the static of the background. He tried to summon Pikachu. Pikachu? The name felt slippery in his mind, like a bar of wet soap. He remembered yellow. He remembered sparks. But the face was blurring. It is peaceful here, isn't it? The voice came from everywhere. It sounded like Kalen, but stripped of human cadence. It was the voice of a tectonic plate shifting. Ash turned, or thought he turned. A massive, geometric shape loomed in the darkness. It was a prism of obsidian, rotating slowly. Inside the prism, trapped like an insect in amber, was Kalen's face, frozen in a scream of ecstasy. Where am I? Ash asked. His voice didn't vibrate in his throat, it was just a thought projected into the abyss. You are in the stomach of God, the prism replied. Outside of time. Outside of causality. Here, bonds do not exist. There is no you. There is no them. There is only the unity of nothing. Ash felt a wave of lethargy wash over him. It was tempting. He had been fighting for so long. Since he was 10 years old, he had been running, battling, saving. His bones were tired. His soul was tired. Why not rest? The void whispered. Why not just stop? He closed his eyes. The memory of a girl with orange hair flashed in his mind. She was yelling at him. Something about a bike. Who is she? Ash wondered. She seems loud. The memory began to fade, eaten by the gray. The indigo crater reality was screaming. Misty landed her Gyarados at the edge of the crater. The heat rising from the pit was intense enough to singe her eyebrows, but she didn't flinch. She slid off the dragon's back and sprinted toward the figure kneeling in the ash. Cynthia was staring at the empty space where the siphon had been. Her coat was gone. Her hands were pressed into the scorched earth. Where is he? Misty demanded, grabbing Cynthia by the shoulder and spinning her around. Cynthia, where is he? Cynthia looked up. Her eyes, usually so sharp and commanding, were vacant. Gone, Cynthia whispered. He jumped in. He plugged the hole with his own existence. Misty slapped her. The sound cracked through the silence of the devastated plateau. It wasn't an act of malice. It was a desperate attempt to reboot the champion's brain. He is not gone, Misty hissed, her voice shaking with a terrifying fury. Ash Ketchum doesn't die. He's too stubborn to die. Where did he go? Mewtwo floated down. The clone looked exhausted, his tail twitching erratically. He is in the ultra-deep space, Mewtwo projected. The singularity collapsed into a pocket dimension. A sealed reality. He trapped the entity inside with him to prevent it from consuming the planet. Can we open it? Misty asked. It requires energy equivalent to a supernova, Mewtwo replied. Or a resonance key. A key? Ash entered that space via the bond phenomenon. His soul is the lock. To open the door, we need a signal that matches his frequency exactly. A signal strong enough to pierce the veil between dimensions. Misty stood up. She wiped the soot from her face. Get the others, she commanded. Misty. Cynthia touched her cheek where she had been slapped, blinking the shock away. Get the harem, Misty said, the word tasting like iron. Sabrina. B. Karina. Elisa. Everyone who has a piece of his heart. If he needs a signal, we're going to scream so loud the universe cracks. Viridian City. The assembly they gathered in the ruins of the Viridian Gym's main arena. The roof was gone, blown off during the final defense. The stars were visible above, a clear, mocking sky. B sat on a piece of concrete, wrapping her hands. She wasn't crying. She looked ready to punch a hole in reality. Karina was pacing, her roller skates clicking nervously. Elisa was chain-smoking a slim cigarette, her hands trembling. Sabrina was floating in the center, her eyes closed, deep in a trance. Cynthia and Misty stood together. We have to link, Sabrina said, her voice echoing without moving her lips. I can create a psychic conduit. But I am just the wire. You are the batteries. How does it work? B asked. You have to remember him, Sabrina explained. Not just his face. You have to remember how he made you feel. The specific vibration of your connection. If we all project that at once, we might be able to create a lighthouse beam that he can see in the dark. And if he doesn't see it, Elisa asked quietly, then he dissolves, Sabrina said. He becomes background radiation. Silence. Let's do it, Karina said. Lucario, get ready. Mewtwo floated above them. I will amplify the signal. I will act as the lens. They formed a circle. Close your eyes, Sabrina ordered. Reach out. Misty went first. She didn't think about the sovereign. She didn't think about the war. She thought about a fishing lure. She thought about a stolen bike. She thought about nights by a campfire, arguing over directions. She projected a feeling of home. Of being grounded. Of water that flows but never leaves the riverbed. Come back, you idiot. B went next. She thought of the weight of him on top of her in the dojo. The smell of his sweat. The absolute solidity of his presence. She projected respect. The feeling of iron sharpening iron. Fight, Ash. Don't you dare yield. Karina focused on the rhythm. She thought of their battle in Shaller City. The dance. The way he smiled when the odds were worst. She projected joy. The adrenaline of the challenge. It's not over until the bell rings. Elisa thought of the lights. She thought of the way he looked at the gala, uncomfortable, but standing tall for the sake of others. She projected admiration. The beauty of authenticity in a fake world. Shine, Ash. Show them the real thing. Cynthia was last. She thought of the cold cave in the Crown Tundra. The warmth of his coat. The heartbeat she felt against her back. She projected partner. An equal. Someone who could share the silence without letting it consume them. I am waiting. The queen is waiting. Sabrina took it all. She took the love, the anger, the respect, the fear. She braided it together into a lance of pure psychic energy. She opened her eyes. They were glowing white. Scream, she commanded. They didn't scream with their voices. They screamed with their souls. Mewtwo caught the blast, amplified it 1,000-fold, and fired it directly into the fabric of space. The void the gray was eating his legs now. Ash looked down. His feet were gone. Just missed. I should be worried, he thought sluggishly. Let go, the prism soothed. It is inevitable. Ash closed his eyes. Then, he heard it. It started as a ripple in the water. A splash, misty. Then a thud. Fist on bone. Then the whir of wheels. Karina? Then the click of a camera. Elisa? Then the turning of a page. Cynthia? The sounds grew louder. They weren't just noises. They were colors. Blue, orange, yellow, purple, white. They pierced the gray fog. Ash gasped. Air-filling lungs that shouldn't exist. The memories slammed back into him. The bike. The dojo. The gala. The cave. I am Ash Ketchum. He looked at his hand. It wasn't translucent anymore. It was solid. He clenched his fist. And I am not done. Pikachu! Ash roared. From the depths of his own soul, the yellow light exploded. Pikachu materialized, corporeal and angry. Pika. Ash looked at the prism. The face of Kalen looked confused. Impossible. You are nothing. I am everything, Ash yelled, because they are with me. He saw a crack in the dark sky, a thin line of blinding white light, the beacon. Grab on. Ash yelled to Pikachu. He didn't run. He didn't fly. He willed himself upward. He swam through the nothingness, chasing the light. The prism shrieked. Tendrils of black shadow lashed out, wrapping around Ash's waist, trying to drag him back down. You belong to the silence. Ash struggled. The grip was strong. It felt like the weight of the entire world pulling him down. Lucario. Ash screamed. In the void, a blue phantom appeared. His bond with Lucario acting as a secondary tether. The phantom slashed at the shadows with a bone rush. Charizard. A phantom dragon appeared, burning the darkness with spectral fire. Greninja. The ninja frog appeared, cutting the tendrils with water shurikens. Ash's entire team. Every Pokemon he had ever loved, ever bonded with. manifested as spirits of pure energy. They weren't physically there, but their bonds were. They formed a chain, pulling him up. Ash reached for the crack in the sky. He could see them on the other side. He saw Misty's face, contorted with effort. He saw Cynthia crying. He reached out. Viridian City, the air in the arena split open. It sounded like a cannon blast. A rift of vertical light tore through the center of the gathering. A hand reached out. A gloved hand. Grab him, Misty screamed. She lunged. B lunge. Cynthia lunge. They grabbed the hand, the arm, whatever they could reach. They pulled. It was heavy, it felt like pulling a mountain. Heave, B roared, her muscles bulging. Don't let go, Cynthia cried. With a final, sickening tear, a body was yanked from the rift. Ash Ketchum hit the concrete floor of the gym. He rolled, coughing violently. He was covered in frost, and his clothes were stiff, but he was there. Solid. The rift snapped shut behind him with a vacuum pop. Silence returned to the gym. Ash lay on his back, staring up at the stars. He took a breath. It rattled in his chest. Ash, Misty whispered. Ash turned his head. He looked at them. The harem, his family. He smiled. It was weak, but it was real. You guys are loud, he rasped. The dam broke. They descended on him. It wasn't a dignified reunion. It was a pile-on. Misty was sobbing into his neck. Karina was hugging his legs. B was gripping his shoulder so hard it might bruise. Cynthia was stroking his hair, her face buried in his chest. Ash lay there, engulfed in their warmth. The cold of the void faded, replaced by the crushing, overwhelming heat of life. I'm back, he whispered. I'm back, the aftermath. An hour later, Ash was sitting up, wrapped in 3 blankets, drinking hot chocolate laced with medicinal herbs. He was still in the ruined arena, refusing to go inside until he was sure the threat was gone. Mewtwo hovered nearby. The entity? Mewtwo asked. Trapped, Ash said. I felt the door close. It's stuck in the void. It'll starve eventually. Kalen. Cynthia asked softly. He's part of it now, Ash said, his eyes darkening. He got what he wanted. Unity. Just, not the kind he expected. He looked around the circle. They were all battered, exhausted, and traumatized. But they were alive. And they were looking at him with an intensity that made his heart rate spike. So, Ash said, trying to break the tension. What now? The League is gone. The plateau is a crater. Viridian is half destroyed. We rebuild, B said firmly. Like always. But not the same way, Misty added. She sat next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. No more bureaucracy. No more PLA telling us who can fight and who can't. A new league, Cynthia mused. Founded on the principles of the fortress. Strength, bonds, independence. She looked at Ash. And it needs a chairman. Ash groaned. No more titles, I just want to sleep. Too bad, Elisa smirked, lighting a new cigarette. You're the sovereign, darling. You broke reality. You don't get to retire after that. Ash looked at them. He realized they weren't going anywhere. This wasn't a temporary alliance. This was the new world order. And he was the center of gravity. He sighed, leaning back against the rubble. Fine, Ash said. But first, dinner. I'm starving. Epilogue of the chapter. The shadow deep in the void. The prism floated in the dark. Kalen's face was gone. Replaced by a single, unblinking eye. It had tasted him. It had tasted the flavor of Ash Ketchum's soul. It had tasted the connections. The hollow god was trapped, yes, but it had learned something. The door could be opened from the outside, and now it knew the frequency. The eye closed. Waiting. Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. The Sovereign's Court. The world did not end with a bang, nor with a whimper. It ended with a signature. 3 weeks had passed since the Indigo Plateau collapsed into a singularity. In that time, the geopolitics of the Pokemon world had fractured. The Pokemon League Association, PLA, the governing body that had regulated everything from gym battles to berry production for 50 years, was effectively decapitated. Its headquarters was a crater. Its leadership was either dead, missing, or hiding in bunkers. Nature abhors a vacuum. And power flows like water. It finds the lowest point and pools there. Right now, the lowest point. The center of gravity was Viridian City. Ash sat in what used to be Giovanni's office. It had been stripped of the dark wood and leather, replaced with functional steel tables and holographic maps. He was looking at a document Elisa had placed in front of him. "They want sanctions," Ash said, rubbing his eyes. He still looked pale, the aftereffects of the void leaving a streak of white in his messy black hair. "Of course they do," Elisa said, blowing smoke toward the ceiling fan. "The United Regions Council is terrified. You aren't just a champion anymore, Ash. You're a tactical nuke that walks and talks. Unova and Kalos are threatening to embargo Kanto unless you submit to a power regulation audit." "Audit?" Ash scoffed. "They want to put a collar on me." "Can you blame them?" Misty walked in, carrying a pot of coffee. She looked tired but sharp, wearing a blazer over her usual attire. "You turned into a star and deleted a god. People are asking if you're even human anymore." Ash looked at his hand. It looked human, but he could feel the hum under the skin, the residual connection to the void. "I saved them," Ash muttered. "Fear doesn't have a memory." Cynthia's voice came from the doorway. She entered, flanked by B. Cynthia had transitioned fully into her role as the diplomat. She wore a black suit that mirrored Ash's new aesthetic, severe, commanding, royal. "The champions have arrived," Cynthia announced. "Lance, Stephen, Leon, Diantha, and Gita. They're waiting in the main hall." Ash stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. "They aren't here to thank me," Ash guessed. "They're here to see if they need to kill you," B said bluntly. She rested a hand on the hilt of a ceremonial sword she had started carrying. "A gift from the Galar dojo. I have the perimeter secured. Karina has Mega Lucario on the roof. If they try anything." "No fighting," Ash ordered. "We are not warlords. We are protectors." "Tell them that," Cynthia said, adjusting his collar. "Stand tall, Ash. You aren't the challenger today. You're the house." The summit, the main arena of the Viridian Gym, had been converted into a meeting hall. A massive round table sat in the center. Sitting around it were the titans of the world. Lance, the Dragon Master and G-Man, looked grim. His cape was heavy on his shoulders. Stephen Stone, the Hoenn champion, fiddled with a piece of rare meteorite, his eyes calculating. Diantha, the Kalos actress, looked anxious, constantly checking her phone. Leon, the former monarch, looked the most relaxed, but his Charizard was out of its ball, standing guard. Gita, the top champion of Paldea, sat perfectly still, observing everything with unreadable eyes. The doors opened. Ash walked in. He didn't walk alone. He was flanked by the harem. To his right, Cynthia and Misty. To his left, Sabrina and Elisa. Behind him, B and Karina. It was a statement. "I am not alone. I have the best of every region." Ash sat at the head of the table. He didn't bow, he didn't smile. "Lance," Ash nodded. "Stephen." "Leon." "Ash," Lance replied. His voice was stiff. "Or should I call you Sovereign?" "Ash is fine." "Ash," Lance continued. "We have reviewed the footage from the plateau. The phenomenon you displayed. It violates Article 9 of the League Charter regarding the use of unauthorized mystic force." "The League Charter is dust, Lance," Ash said calmly. "The League is dust. The institution survives." Stephen Stone interjected, leaning forward. "We cannot simply abandon the law because of one crisis. We need order. The markets are crashing. Trainers are afraid to battle because they think their Pokémon might explode. They're afraid because Kalen showed them the truth," Ash countered. "That the system we built was feeding a monster." "And what is your solution?" Gita asked softly. "To rule them yourself. This Viridian fortress of yours. It looks less like a gym and more like a capital city." "It's a shield," Misty snapped. "We held the line while you were hiding in your towers." "We were maintaining order," Diantha argued. "You were blind." Sabrina's voice cut through the air telepathically. "We saw the satellites. We saw the energy drain. You let it happen." The room erupted into shouting. Arguments about jurisdiction, funding, and blame flew across the table. Ash sat silent. He watched them. He saw their fear. They weren't bad people. They were just men and women trying to hold onto a world that had already moved on. He slowly unleashed his aura. It wasn't an attack. It was a weight. The air in the room grew heavy, smelling of ozone and rain. The shouting died down. Everyone turned to look at Ash. "I don't want to rule the world," Ash said quietly. "I want to save it." He placed a hand on the table. The League failed. It became a business. It forgot the bond. "So what do you propose?" Leon asked, looking at his former rival. "Anarchy." "No," Ash said. "A reformation." He signaled to Elisa. She activated the holographic projector in the center of the table. A map of the world appeared. But instead of regions divided by borders, they were connected by ley lines, the flow of infinity energy. "We stop battling for sport," Ash declared. "At least for now. We turn the gyms into what they were meant to be. Training grounds for defense. Every gym leader becomes a guardian of their local ley line. We monitor the energy. We stop the silence remnants from regrouping." "And who coordinates this?" Lance asked. "You, a council," Ash said. "You, me, Cynthia, all of us, equal votes." "But you have the power," Steven pointed out. "If you disagree with us, you can just rewrite reality again. How do we trust you?" Ash stood up. He unclipped his belt. He placed his 6 Pokeballs on the table. Pikachu hopped off his shoulder and sat next to them. "Because I'm retiring from active competition," Ash said. The room gasped. "I won't battle for titles anymore. I will only battle if the world is threatened. I am not the monarch. I am the deterrent." He looked at Lance. "You want order? I'll give you peace. But you have to let me build the walls." Lance looked at the Pokeballs. He looked at Ash's eyes, yellow, tired, ancient. He looked at Cynthia, who stood by Ash with a fierce, protective pride. Lance sighed. He slumped back in his chair. "The League is dead," Lance whispered. "Long live the Alliance." The celebration that night, Viridian City didn't sleep, but for the first time in months, it wasn't because of fear, it was a festival. The summit had ended with the signing of the Viridian Pact. The crisis was officially over. The gym was filled with music. It was a private party for the inner circle. Ash sat on the balcony, watching the fireworks over the city. He held a drink, but he wasn't drinking it, he was just breathing. "Heavy lies the crown." Ash turned. Karina skated over, holding a plate of macarons. She wasn't wearing her gym uniform. She was in a sundress, looking confusingly normal. "I didn't want the crown," Ash said. "That's why it fits," Karina grinned. She popped a macaron into his mouth. "Eat. You're too skinny." Ash chewed, smiling. "Thanks." Bee walked out, wearing a simple evening gown that showed off the muscles in her back. She stood next to Karina. "The Galar Dojo sent a message," Bee said. "They want to know if I'm returning." "Are you?" Ash asked, feeling a sudden pang of anxiety. Bee looked at him. She looked at the city below. "No," she said. "My training isn't finished. I have yet to defeat you in a grapple." "You pinned me last week," Ash reminded her. "You slipped," Bee lied smoothly. "It doesn't count." Misty and Elisa joined them. Elisa was live streaming the fireworks on her phone. "Say hi to the fans, Sovereign," Elisa laughed, pointing the camera at him. Ash ducked away. "Elisa, stop. The world loves you, Ash," Elisa said, lowering the phone. "You should see the polls. 90% approval rating. They're calling you the Peacekeeper." "I prefer, Ash," he muttered. Misty leaned against the railing next to him. "You did good today. Lance was terrified, but he respects you." "He respects Cynthia," Ash corrected. "She did all the talking." "She speaks for you," Sabrina said, floating down from the roof to join the group. "Because you speak for the world." The harem was assembled. 6 women who had stood by him when the sky fell. They surrounded him, a wall of affection and strength. Cynthia stepped out last. She held 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to Ash. "To the future," she proposed. Ash clinked his glass against hers. "To the future." He looked at them. Misty, his anchor. Cynthia, his queen. Bee, his sword. Karina, his spirit. Sabrina, his mind. Elisa, his voice. He realized then that he hadn't just built a fortress of stone. He had built a fortress of people. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the itch to run to the next town. He was home. The bedroom later that night. The Viridian Gym's master suite was vast, a remnant of Giovanni's extravagance. Ash had never used it before, preferring the cot in the office. But tonight, the girls had insisted. He sat on the edge of the massive bed, taking off his boots. The door opened. Cynthia walked in. She wasn't wearing the suit anymore, she was wearing a silk robe. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too quiet," Ash admitted. "I got used to the noise of the war." Cynthia sat next to him. She ran a hand through his hair. "The noise will return," she said softly. "The world is always loud, but for tonight, we can have quiet." The door opened again. Misty peeked in. "Are we having a team meeting?" she asked, feigning innocence. Apparently, Cynthia smiled. "Come in, Misty." Misty entered, followed by Sabrina and Karina. Bea and Elisa lingered in the hallway, then shrugged and joined them. It wasn't sordid. It was domestic. A pile of blankets and pillows. They gathered on the bed, sitting in a circle, talking about everything and nothing. They talked about the reconstruction. About which wild Pokemon were migrating back. About how bad Brock's cooking was compared to the hospital food. A lie to make themselves feel better about his condition. Ash lay back against the headboard, listening to their voices. He closed his eyes. He felt a hand on his chest. Cynthia. A hand on his leg. Misty. A weight on the bed near his feet. Bea. He was surrounded by their aura. It drowned out the memory of the void. "Ash," Misty whispered. "Yeah? You're smiling." "I am," Ash murmured, drifting off to sleep. "I really am." The epilogue of the chapter. The signal. While Viridian City slept, deep in the server room of the rebuilt gym, a computer monitor flickered to life. It was connected to the deep space radar array Sabrina had linked to. A signal was coming in. It wasn't from the void, it wasn't Kalen. It was from beyond the void. A text string, decoded from cosmic background radiation. Location confirmed. Prepare for arrival. The text wasn't in unknown script. It wasn't in any human language. It was in the language of the original one, Arceus. The computer logged the signal and went back to sleep. The war for the Earth was over. The trial of the Sovereign was about to begin. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. The Eternal Bond. 5 years. Time flows differently when you are rebuilding a world. In the history books, they called it the Viridian Era. It was a time of unprecedented peace, but it was a peace built on the edge of a blade. Ash Ketchum stood on the balcony of the Sovereign's Tower, a spire of white stone and reinforced glass that pierced the clouds above Viridian City. He was 29 years old now. The boyish softness was entirely gone, replaced by the sharp, weathered features of a man who had stared into the abyss and survived. He wore the high-collared coat of the Sovereign, charcoal gray with gold trim, but beneath it, he still wore the same simple t-shirt. "You're brooding," a voice noted from the doorway. Ash smiled without turning. "I'm observing, Misty. There's a difference." Misty walked out to join him. She had cut her hair shorter, sharper. She looked every inch the admiral of the Kanto Naval Defense. She handed him a tablet. "Report from the border," she said. "Wild Pokemon aggression is down 0.4% again. The purification towers B installed in the forests are working. The residual corruption from the Hollow God is almost gone." "Almost," Ash repeated, taking the tablet, "but the scars remain." He looked down at the city. It was no longer the dusty town of his youth. It was a metropolis of green and silver. Sky bridges connected the buildings, allowing flying types to navigate freely. The streets were filled not just with trainers, but with citizens living in harmony with the environment. It was a fortress disguised as a paradise. "Are you ready for today?" Misty asked, her voice softening. Ash looked up at the sky. It was blue, clear, and innocent, but he knew what was coming. The signal from 5 years ago had finally stopped repeating. It had changed to a countdown. "The creator doesn't own a watch," Ash joked dryly, "but yes, I'm ready." The council chamber, the inner circle gathered in the war room. It was no longer a place of panic. It was a place of governance. Cynthia sat at the head of the table opposite Ash. She was effectively the Prime Minister of the Alliance. Her presence commanded the respect of every region from Unova to Paldea. Sabrina floated in a lotus position, her eyes glowing faintly as she monitored the global psychic network. Bea and Karina sat together. They were the sword and shield of the Sovereign. Bea ran the global peacekeeping force, while Karina oversaw the elite response units. Elisa managed the culture. She ensured that the fear of the dark years didn't curdle into hatred of Pokemon. The atmospheric pressure is dropping, Sabrina announced, her voice echoing in the room. Global readings. It's happening everywhere at once. Mount Coronet. The Spear Pillar. The Hall of Origin. Is it an attack? Bee asked, her hand drifting to her belt. No, Ash said, standing up, it's an inspection. He walked to the window. Arceus is coming to see if we're worthy of the world we saved. As he spoke, the sky split. It wasn't a violent tear like the void. It was a majestic, blinding opening of the heavens. Golden light poured down, bathing Viridian City in an ethereal glow. The clouds formed a staircase descending from the zenith. A sound resonated across the planet, 1,000 bells ringing in harmony. Let's go say hello, Ash said. The plaza of the Sovereign. Ash walked out of the tower and into the massive central plaza. The citizens of Viridian had gathered, their faces turned upward in awe. They parted for him, a sea of people making way for their king. The harem walked behind him. They were not cowering, they were his court. A beam of light struck the center of the plaza. The stone melted, reforming into a dais of crystal. From the light, a creature emerged. It was quadrupedal, white and gray, with a golden wheel around its abdomen. Its eyes were green jewels that held the history of the universe. Arceus. The alpha Pokemon. The pressure was immense. It wasn't the malicious gravity of the hollow god. It was the crushing weight of absolute purity. Citizens fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the presence of the divine. Ash did not kneel. He stood 10 yards away, his hands at his sides. Pikachu stood by his foot, ears perked, sparking defiantly. Ash Ketchum, the voice spoke. It wasn't sound. It was truth, written directly onto the atoms of the air. The anomaly. Lord Arceus, Ash acknowledged, bowing his head slightly, a greeting between equals, not a submission. You have altered the design, Arceus stated. The cycle of this world was meant to end with the awakening of the hollow god. It was a necessary purge. A reset. You stopped it. I did, Ash said. You stepped outside the bounds of mortality. You fused with the essence of creation to seal the void. You hold a power that does not belong to a human. The golden wheel spun. The light intensified, scorching the air. Why should I allow this deviation to persist? Your fortress disrupts the natural flow. You have created a stagnation of peace. Stagnation? Cynthia stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she held her ground. Look around you. This isn't stagnation. It's growth. We stopped fighting each other so we could fight for life. Arceus turned its gaze to Cynthia, the champion who abandoned her throne. I found a better one, Cynthia replied, standing next to Ash. B stepped up. We defend the weak. Karina joined them. We bond through spirit, not subjugation. Misty stood at Ash's right hand. We protect the balance. Sabrina floated to his left. We remember the cost. Elisa completed the circle. We speak the truth. Arceus looked at the women surrounding the sovereign. You have surrounded yourself with pillars, Arceus observed. But a pillar can crumble. What binds this world together, Ash Ketchum? Is it fear of the dark? Or is it your will alone? Neither, Ash said. He stepped forward. He closed his eyes and flared his aura. It wasn't the violent, jagged lightning of the war. It was a soft, steady pulse. It rippled out from him, touching Pikachu, then Misty, then the harem, then the crowd, then the city, then the land itself. It's the bond, Ash said. Kalen thought bonds were weakness. He thought they drained us. But he was wrong. Bonds are infinite energy. They don't take, they multiply. He opened his eyes. They were glowing with that calm, terrifying yellow light. You created this world, Arceus. But we live in it. We bled for it. It belongs to us now. The silence stretched for an eternity. The golden light flared, threatening to erase them all. Then, the wheel stopped spinning. Bold, Arceus noted, arrogant, and correct. The oppressive pressure vanished. The golden light softened into a warm afternoon glow. I did not come to destroy you, Sovereign. I came to witness the anomaly. I have seen many timelines. Many versions of Ash Ketchum. In most, you remain an eternal child, wandering a world that never changes. Arceus lowered its head, looking Ash in the eye. This is the only timeline where you grew up. Ash exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Keep your world, Ash Ketchum. But know this. The Hollow God was but a symptom. By sealing the void, you have made this planet a beacon in the multiverse. Others will come. Other things from the dark. Let them come, Ash said, a small, confident smile touching his lips. We have a fortress. Arceus began to fade, dissolving back into light. Then rule well, sovereign, until we meet again at the end of time. The beam retracted. The clouds closed. The sky returned to blue. The crowd erupted. A cheer that shook the foundations of the city. Ash didn't wave. He turned to his partners. He saw the relief in their eyes. He liked you, Karina giggled nervously, breaking the tension. He didn't obliterate us, Cynthia corrected, exhaling sharply. That counts as a glowing review. Ash looked at his hand. The tremor was gone. The war was finally, truly over. Let's go home, Ash said. The final scene that evening, the sun set over Kanto, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Ash sat on the edge of the gym's roof, his legs dangling over the precipice. Pikachu was asleep on his lap. The door behind him opened. It wasn't just one of them, it was all of them. They came out, not saying a word, and sat with him. Misty leaned against his right shoulder. Cynthia took his left. Bee and Karina sat near his legs. Sabrina and Elisa stood behind him, resting their hands on his shoulders. They watched the lights of Viridian City flicker on, one by one. A constellation of civilization in the darkness. Do you miss it? Misty asked softly. Traveling? Sleeping in the dirt? Being a nobody? Ash thought about it. He thought about the freedom of the road, the thrill of not knowing what was over the next hill. Then he felt the weight of Cynthia's head on his shoulder. He felt the warmth of Misty's hand in his. He felt the steady, psychic hum of Sabrina's mind protecting his dreams. He looked at the city he had built. The world he had saved. No, Ash said. I found what I was looking for. And what was that? Cynthia asked. Ash looked at them, his harem, his generals, his loves. A place to stop running. He reached up and adjusted his hat, the same hat he had worn since the beginning, now tattered and faded, but still crowned with the symbol of the League. He turned it backward. Besides, Ash grinned, the old spark returning to his eyes. If anything from the multiverse tries to attack us, I pity them. Why? Bee asked, smiling. Because, Ash said, as Pikachu woke up and sparked his cheeks. They have to get through you guys first. The women laughed. It was a sound of pure joy, ringing out over the fortress city. Under the stars, the sovereign and his queens sat together, watching over the world they ruled. Not with fear, not with tyranny, but with the unbreakable power of the eternal bond. The end.